Thank you very much. So over to you, Parul.
Thank you, ma'am. So good afternoon, everyone. Today we are going to have a session on water smart solution and strategies by Tata Trust. And the speakers for today are Mr. Divyang Waghela and Mr. Vinod Kothari. So I would like to introduce you. Mr. Divyang Waghela joined the Tata Trust in 2008 and currently heads Tata Water Mission, that is WASH at the Trust. Tata Water Mission aims to provide safe drinking water and improve sanitization services to rural undeserved communities through technological advancement and enhanced service delivery mechanism through sustainable approaches. Currently, the TWM's outreach is in more than 5,500 villages and 3.5 million people across 15 states in India. Apart from being a part of the TWM team, he is a director of the Coastal Salinity Prevention Cell, Ahmedabad, an institution supported by the Tata Trust. He pursued his MBA with specialization in finance and has been working in the development sector for more than 15 years. After working with the multilateral project on project finance and project management for bulk water transmission in Gujarat, Mr. Waghela made a transition to the non-profit sector in 2004 and joined Water and Sanitation Management Organization, where he was a state head for community-based decentralized drinking water and sanitization projects. After working with WASMO for more than 5 years, in 2008 he joined Tata Trust in Mumbai and anchored the water sanitization and hygiene, that is WASH portfolio for the trust. He anchored India's one of the biggest fellowship program, namely Zilla Swachh Bharat Parerak, a collaborative effort of Tata Trust and Department of Drinking Water and Sanitization, Government of India, which was designed to support Swachh Bharat mission by placing young professionals across 500 districts in 29 states. His areas of interest are working on sustainable development process through technology innovations and community approaches in social development space, especially in water security, climate change and sanitization sector. Welcome you, sir. On the behalf of entire C4Y team, I welcome you in today's event. Now, Mr. Vinod Kothari, he is a resident of Dehradun, India. He has an abiding interest and understanding of issue which plague rural communities and retard development. Currently, he leads water portfolio for Central and Western Himalayan region and Himotan, an associate organization of Tata Trust. Mr. Kothari has been working with communities and their institutions for more than 20 years. Understanding natural resources, water governance, and statistical modeling are a few areas of his interest. He holds master degree in statistics, diploma in environment and business management, and is a doctoral candidate. Mr. Kothari is a member secretary to Springshed Management Consortium and coordinating SMC proactively for Springshed Management in Uttarakhand State. Welcome, sir. And now I would like to hand over to you. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
So, Divyang, I'm very glad to know that you were there with WASMO. I also worked with, not WASMO, but with Vandana Pandya. I don't know whether you had worked with her, but yeah. So she has been, I've worked with Center for Environment Education. And
yeah, Atul and Vanna both were like working together.
And yes, yeah. Glad. Welcome.
Okay, so thanks. So I think how many people we are expecting, Alka, just for a knowledge?
We are 20 of them as fellows of this cohort, and they are just joining because some of them in between they're shuttling between practical exam session, something that they have been managing both ends. So they're here. They have been here at one point of time.
Great. You know, I mean, I think it's always pleasure to talk to the youth of the country. And as I also mentioned that I was also a part of designing and implementation of the Zilla Swachh Bharat Prerak. It was one of the largest fellowship program on sanitation, specifically in the development space. We run it for around 3 years, and I think it has very good memories I have for that. And I think I always feel that I think the youth in the country are going to be a change maker. So I think it's really great to engage with them. And thanks for this opportunity, Alka and your organization. It's always a pleasure to be a part of the group, which I think I've seen some of the very known names on your screen. So I think they all are either directly or indirectly I work with many of them. Aragyam has been one of the partners with us, WaterAid, very good friends, and that. So I think the cohort you brought in terms of the people as well as the organization has been great. So thanks for that. And without taking too much of time, because I think it's quite a long session, and I think I generally don't have that kind of experience of taking a sessions of 3 hours. So I will try that people should not get bored. Okay, so that's the first agenda. And I think just to start that, I think it's important for me to share my journey and how actually I got into this non-profit sector, which I feel it's a kind of a opportune time to share that. So, I mean, I think as you guys, I think have started and embarking into a new journey, or maybe trying to explore some more opportunities. I was also in the similar way. When I started my career, so before WaSMO, I was working with the Asian Development Bank, and it was broadly on a project financing, contract management. So it's a very natural progression for me to, after completing my MBA in finance, I joined there. The person who actually established WaSMO, we had some interaction with him. So one fine day he asked me, would you like to join WaSMO? I'm creating some non-profit organization. So my first question was that, will you give me more money? So, so he said, yeah, that I think will be taken care of. So sometimes your, careers, your progression is an accident. I mean, I feel that's today we have very conscious in terms of deciding our career path. But I think that time I was like, my motivation factor, okay, paisa acha denge, I will join. So anyway, so he gave me good, money, and then I joined there. But joining the non-profit was a starting point of that. But then I started learning the tricks of what is the development sector, how you want to work with the people. And I think the important part was about the community-centric approach. So ultimately, you need to look at how you actually are, at the end of the day, how you are benefiting someone with the basic, services. We were working on water. So we say how to provide safe drinking water. After working for around 1.5 years, it was still a very dilemma whether I should continue or not in this space, because but I think in one of the projects we started in tribal areas. So tribal areas is, I can give you a brief on that. That in India, tribals are more backward region. So Kaparada district, that is in the south of Gujarat, and as per the Kolgi committee report, that was one of the bottom of the pyramid districts. So we worked there for water, and then we had an inauguration of that water scheme. So that village is in a small valley, so water has to come from the hill. So we created a source, pipeline, stuff like that. And I went there because I worked for that almost a year and a half, and I then went there for an inauguration. And then all village, it was a small village, 30-40 households, but it's around 100 and 120 people gathered. And I think after independence of 60 years or 65 years, I think the first time when they opened the tap and they saw a water. And I think that was I think that moment or that picture will always stay with me, because then people started actually touching my feet and my colleagues' feet, and we were quite young. And I think I felt that what great I have done for which these guys are actually touching my feet. And then I realized that something small for us, I think maybe something great for some other people. So I think that's how I understood the whole philosophy about people's need. And then I think that gives me a kick, and then I continued working in the development sector for another, 1.5 decades. So that's the journey which I wanted to first share, because I think there are a lot of dilemmas will come in your career path, and this is not going to be an easy path. So that's why I think I just wanted to share that personal experience. Now, I think I'm asked that I should talk about the Tata Trust's water strategy. And talk about how we are actually looking at the water as a subject, and how we are actually, trying to address this project, the issue of the national priority or national interest. Now, can you see my screen? Alka, can you just confirm that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm nodding my head. Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. So I will, this is a very long presentation, but I think I will try to squeeze something. So I will not, there are slides about the background and stuff, but that's just for building a context. And I think you have already, as I understand, you have already gone through a lot of sessions where you have already understood the data and stuff like that. But I just thought, let's keep it here. But what I would like to share some stories with you, some successful case studies, some learnings with you. Just to give you a flavor of it, and I think it may be helpful to you in your the scholarship program, may not be helpful to you, but I I feel that it's good to share, because that's, I think, the learning process everyone has to go through. And before that, obviously, I mean, it's an opportune time. I need to talk to about the Tata Trust. I think it's important, because I think I represent an institution. I'm a custodian of the resources, what I invest in the sector. So I think it's important for me to share the philosophy and belief of our trustees, our founding members. So this is a Jamshedji Tata's quote, that in a free enterprise, the community is not just another stakeholder in business, but it is in fact the very purpose of its existence. So when I say all our approaches are community centric, I think this statement qualifies that very well, that the community is not another stakeholder, but it's a part of the ecosystem of the business to exist. And I mean, with that philosophy, the group has been actually working. And I think one of the first trust which has been founded, which is in 1895. So 1892. So you can see this journey of various trusts which have been created over a period of last almost more than 125 years. So the legacy has been quite long, and I think then and hence I think the responsibility of people like us who are part of the organization or an institution becomes a very high, that to take forward the philosophy, the principles and values of the organizations. There are around 13 different trusts which have been set up over a period of last 125 years, and most of the family members have pledged their 100% of wealth towards this trust. So, I mean, many of you might be knowing that 60% of the Tata group's income, Tata group's shares are being held by the Tata Trust, and hence all this 60% resources earned dividend income goes into the charitable purpose. So that way it's a legacy. And I think that recently there was an article that in last century, the Tata Group has actually contributed more than $100 billion towards the charity, and one of the largest in the world. I think it's more than the charity of money. I think the values which I think instill in the philanthropic institution is more important. That's what I think I wanted to highlight. We have actually also gone through a kind of progression cycle of reinventing the philanthropy. So we have actually, based on the changing scenario, changing need of the country, I think our philanthropic process has also changed. So initially we used to support the charitable organizations, which is, I think, there are a lot of non-profit organizations in the sector. So we tried and promoted those institutions. So many institutions who have actually started the non-profit activities might have got one of the first grants from the Tata Trust over a period of last many years. So that was the starting of actually the work. But at the same time, we also try and look at how we can activating the philanthropic investment into the space. Because that's, I think, equally important, that you yourself don't contribute, you also actually create an ecosystem in the philanthropy, so that the more investment come through philanthropic part. In India, I think there was a cultural values are there where the philanthropy should come, but that needs to be formalized. And now we are looking at more inspiring strategic philanthropy. So now we need to look at more as a strategic investment. Now, and I think the next slide we'll look at the strategic investment aspects. But in 1995, we started building the strategic plan. So we started 5-year strategic plan, and based on that strategic plan, we actually create our areas of work, areas of interest to work on. And I think we, as Mr. Tata always mentioned, the Tata Trust will have to keep renewing itself. So we need to, and there is a classic saying that when you get an answer to your question gets changed. So you need to renew your own thinking behind your work. So it's a more dynamic in nature. So that's the thing. These are some of the drivers through which we work. So one is invest in issues of national significance. So which are the issues which are, I think, important for us as a country, as in India. So that's important. Second, we need to look at the more future forward. So in terms of more futuristic approach need to be taken. As I mentioned, the creating a solution will not make a lasting impact, but creating a resilience of communities will make a lasting impact. And hence we have to look at more futuristic thinking process. Build a culture of excellence. I think this is a very important that I think we need to build a culture of excellence. We can't just see that the business as usual is acceptable norm. I think we need to come out with that. And sometimes in the development sector, people say that there is a limited accountability or there is no accountability. I think that whole notion needs to be broken. That myth needs to be broken. So we need to build a culture of excellence. So whatever we work in the for-profit entities, looking at the some kind of a return on investment, the same kind of a return on investment need to be also thought through in the development space. Obviously, they make the judicious use of convening power to catalyze and change. That's the, I think, collaborative effort, building partnership, and making a change is important. So sometimes you may not be a driving factor of making a change, but you play a very critical role. You may be playing a pivotal role or catalyzing role to bring that change. That's important. And I think most of our, if you look at our history, I think most of the catalyzing role which have been played by one of the biggest individuals in the country. So that's why I think how you can play that role is important. Coming to that, I think after that philosophical thoughts and the drivers, I would just move to the issues on water and sanitation and hygiene. You know that I think the water, sanitation, and hygiene are interlinked. All these three are linked with the SDG 6. But we also feel that SDG 5 and SDG 13 are equally important for the wash sector. And what our strategies are, it's broadly linked with these three things. So I'm not getting into it, but obviously the poor sanitation is causing unhygienic environment. Poor sanitation causes water contamination, and water scarcity causes poor hygiene practices. And also it linked with the larger economic poverty in the country. So water is one of the major factor in terms of the improved livelihood opportunities. So that way, this is the starting point for us. Just give you a very quick overview, and I think you must have gone through this water value chain. So water value chain can be divided into 5 different elements: source, storage, distribution, consumption, and discharge. So these are some of the areas which we demystified so that we understand which each section or each category very effectively, and how we can address that each category. Sometimes you can address all the problems, but because of the resource constraint and because of the knowledge constraint, you may not be able to work in all areas. So you work in specific areas. So Trust, as a part of his strategy, work in some elements with the higher intensity and some elements with the low intensity. So that's the broader value chain. In current, if you look at the status of water value chain, storage, you know that I think we are very much dependent on the rainfall or a glacier meltdown as a natural resources. And I think less than 1% we are dependent on the artificial water availability in terms of desalination or water reuse. So that's, I think, the one is a source aspect. Storage, you are aware about the ground. I'm assuming that you are aware about the groundwater and surface water storage availability. Groundwater is depleting very fast, so you know that those challenges, and I can deep dive into it. The pipe water supply system, the distribution, which currently we are having a very significant focus on, the 82%. So this is a data of around a year and a half back, but currently if you see that around 70% of the households don't have a pipe water in rural India, whereas in urban India, it's around 40% households don't have a pipe water. And for that, the government of India has also started a Jal Jeevan Mission program. And yesterday or earlier, you must have heard about the Jal Jeevan Mission program also. Important part of our on the value chain is consumption. So whatever water is available, we know there is a limited sources. Consumption is equally challenging. So, for example, agriculture is using the highest amount of water, and how we can actually optimize that. That should be a one strategy. The discharge is municipal and industrial waste, which we know that it's not being effectively reused, and hence I think we are a part of the zero sum game. So we use a lot of water, we overuse a lot of water, but we don't do a recycling of those water. That's a bit of a challenge. As a trust perspective, we have selected 3 areas, and I would like to just highlight these 3 areas. So because that's important, that each theme or each vertical need to be understood into a greater detail, and then we can build a strategy around it. So how to build a strategy? One, you need to understand the problem statement. To the two, you need to understand the intensity of a problem, and with some parameters I will also share with you how we select this areas of intervention. So water scarcity, you know that demand is going to be a double to the supply by 2030. And if you look at the availability of water, around 40% blocks in the country are impacted of the over extraction of groundwater. So they are either in the semi-critical or critical areas. So most of the western parts of the country has been facing a severe water scarcity challenges. Second part is about water access. Around 14 crore rural households don't have a water available at the doorstep. So women have to travel long distance, adults and girls have to spend time daily 2 to 3 hours to get this 10 or 15 liters of water. It has its own challenges, opportunity cost loss, social dimension to the gender inequality. Those are the challenges on water access part, and water contamination. So you can see that around 70% of the water bodies are polluted. 17 states have a high fluoride issues, 5 states have high arsenic issues, and around 11 states have a high salinity issues. So the idea is that we need to demystify the water as a value chain perspective, and second, about the scarcity, access, and quality perspective. I will just very quickly, in a very next 3 to 5 minutes, I will just very quickly go through the some of the challenges, which is actually something in deep dive. And I don't want to talk on all data because the presentation will be shared. But I just would like to just give you one perspective that in 1951, if you look at the chart below, the bar chart with the line, you can see that the per capita availability of water has gone substantially down. Now, in the 1951 is 5,200 cubic meter. Water was available per capita. Now it is available 1,500 cubic meter, which is actually almost 70% reduction in that. And now, if it goes below 1,000, at this point of time, we are actually close to 1,100 or 1,200. But if it goes below 1,000 cubic meter availability, it will fall into a severely affected category, severely water scarcity affected category. The country will become into that, and hence it's important that we need to create some kind of a longer term solutions for the water related issues. And I think this impacts the most vulnerable. Most vulnerable in the bottom of the pyramid will be where are the people who are most vulnerable, as well as the geography are most vulnerable, are going to be impacted. You must have seen in last 3 to 5 years, areas like Bengaluru, Chennai, Pune, and Delhi have been facing severe water crisis. And I think you know that how much population is dependent in this kind of urban area are residing in these areas, and who are going to face a severe water scarcity if the business as usual is going to be continued. We are also going to have a very severe impact on the GDP of the country. We may lose around 6% of the GDP by 2050 if we continue with this similar kind of approach, both on the water consumptions or we are not managing the water effectively. Getting into a bit of a more in terms of the areas in terms of water scarcity in plains and water scarcity in a hilly region, because India is quite diverse country. So we know that we have either groundwater availability or a surface water availability. Now, groundwater is a bit of a challenge for us. I think current groundwater level at around 63% of total replenishment level. and groundwater reserves have declined in last decade or so by 61%. So severely, I think we are over extracting groundwater, and I think groundwater is also linked with the water quality issues. And we know that it's mostly a man-made or a human-made, not man-made, but the human-made issue. We are restricting our catchment areas. So deforestation is very, very high. The urbanization is becoming very fast now in the country. We have an inadequate water conservation infrastructure. So there are limited efforts going on in groundwater conservation management, either on the governance perspective or a rainwater harvest or a infrastructure perspective. The investment is coming low and the governance is also not there. So obviously it is actually, the challenges are on twofold. The last part is about the limited data, and limited data is, I think, is cutting across all verticals, which I'm going to talk about. We don't have a data, reliable data, or we have a very limited data which can help us in terms of taking a right decisions. And hence it's important that how we can create a system or ecosystem where the data are collected and used effectively. Low per capita storage, I think that's a very important element. If you look at the countries like Australia and USA, the per capita storage is very high. It's 3,245 cubic meter in Australia. Whereas if you look at India, it's only 190. There are two reasons. One is obviously we have a higher population, but I think the limited efforts has been done on the rainfall capturing, so water harvesting efforts. So you can see that only 8% of annual rainfall is being captured through storage infrastructure, and 5 states are contributing highest in the water reservoir capacity. And these 5 states are Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Karnataka, Odisha, and Gujarat. These are the 5 states which are contributing 60% of our water storage capability. So you can see that other states which are not having enough storage capability will be facing much more severe challenges. Okay, so this is the data which I think may be useful to you. This is the data in terms of a consumption. So we are wasting a lot of water, both on urban and rural. Just touch upon one point about in India, we are using 5 times more water for crop production than China. So I think you can understand that agriculture, which consumes 86% or 82% of the water of available resources, we are using far higher water for agriculture, which is obviously a matter of worry or area of concern. And if you look at the urban part, our inefficiency in water management is very, very high. So we have a non-revenue water. You know that 40% is the non-revenue water in Delhi. Whereas if you benchmark with Singapore or Jerusalem, it's a 5 to 11%. It's a huge gap in the country, and I think we know that if this gap is going to be not met effectively, this will continue. This situation will going to be worst in going forward. And there are some of the reasons for that. Policy challenges are there, though we are not following the best farming practices for that. We have a standards and guideline challenges, and also we have a limited data availability. Water, agriculture, and energy has a very strong nexus. You all are aware about it. I don't want to go into much detail of it, but I think the lower tariff on water also is one of the reasons for overuse and wastage of water. Second part, which I think my colleague is going to speak now, Vinod, is going to speak about the water scarcity aspects on the issues in the hills, because 12 states are part of this hilly region. You can see that from the map, from Jammu Kashmir to the northeastern states. All are dependent on the springs. There are close to 3 million springs in India Himalayan region, which actually covers around these 12 states. And around 24% of surface flow irrigation systems are based on springs in Himalayan region. So this is the perspective of the Himalayan region, or I would say a hilly region. We have an Eastern Ghat and Western Ghats, and I'm sure you must have heard about a lot of elements on the springs availability in those regions, but Vinod will talk about specifically on the Himalayan region. So Vinod, are you available?
Yeah, Divyang. Good afternoon.
Okay, so I will now, because this is the right time, 2:30. I wanted to have a Vinod to come on this point, and I think Vinod will talk about this part, and remaining part I will talk about on the other elements of the strategy. So Vinod, I think I would just request you can start your presentation, and then maybe we can talk about the Springshed management, both problems and solutions. So you can have a real-time understanding on the case study of the Springshed management. So Vinod, you can share your screen and go ahead. I think on the interest of time, we can take a questions maybe after completion of Vinod's presentation, and then maybe I can continue my presentation and we can go ahead. I hope that's fine, Alka and other colleagues who are coordinating this. Is it okay? Okay, great. So Vinod, you can share your, you can go ahead, please. Thank you, everyone.
Is it visible, Divyang and team?
Yes, it is visible.
Right.
It is
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for having me on this call. So what Divyang has indicated, I'm specifically going to talk on some issues of the water governance and the community. Specifically, my experience and the cases which I'm going to present to you will remain on the Western and Central Himalayan region, specifically some of the Uttarakhand and other parts, Leh and, Himachal. So I would be covering 2-3 key aspects. One, the water governance, where it was earlier, how it has been governed, and what would be the role of the communities and all. And then we'll talk on the second part of the few slides, what we have been done so far, what kind of our data is saying, how we are just going to take it forward, and what we have been, done on the, on the national and state level, just to take this Springshed management or the water governance part at the next level.
Let me welcome you, Vinod. Actually, we have introduced you in the beginning of the session, but thank you very much for agreeing to be part of it and sharing your wonderful experience. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'll just reshare my screen again. I mean, there is some issue on it. Yeah, right. So because I'm sitting in a very remote location, so there is a connectivity issue. So I'm not opening my video also. So otherwise you will see only my face, instead of the presentation. So, okay. So we initiated this with and thank you very much, Madam, for introducing me. So specifically the cases would remain on the kind of a Central and Western Himalayan region, some of our experiences and what we have been doing so far. And specifically, if you look at, the traditional system of the water governance in especially the Himalayan regions or, northern part of the country in India, so it has always been traditionally governed by the communities, right? They are the kind of a custodian to your water resources. And still, if you notice, if you go to the remote location in the, be it in Nepal, be it in India, be it in north part of the India, Himachal, Leh, Ladakh also, still, I mean, they, they take or they treat their water systems or the water springs, Nala, Dhara, whatever locally they called it, very secret places. And still, I mean, it's a very, most of the ritual still in specifically I've noticed, because I've been in the sector for almost 22 years, right? So, so they, take it very, most of the rituals around the water systems on all, if the new, bride will come, so initially they will take to the new dharas or Nala, they will take the rituals, they will conduct the whatever the puja and all, and then they will take one bucket of water to the home and they start cooking it. So that what we're trying to focus here, because we need to look at institution, community, if you really wanted to sustain or wanted to rejuvenate or wanted to work around the water system. So the communities and the institution are the key aspects to it. And still the people, most of the people in the Himalayan region, they treat water as a subsidy from the forest, because most of the springs which Divyang was trying to indicate is coming from the forest. And especially that there is a different type of forest, basically it's a kind of a community owned forest, reserve forest, and then if you need to work on the reserve forest, so government has to be given you the permission to work on the your springs or the catchment area, especially which is treating or which is giving the flow to your springs. So this is some of the picture basically how people managing their springs or the water from the forest, and then is coming to their kind of a tap or the stand post and all. So so this is but like after 70s 80s when the government had initiated the plan to construct the village level water schemes, right, be it in a different name. So then the water is coming to their stand post or very near to the household level. And then I mean there is some lack of interest, it has been reduced. Basically initially they were just going to clean their water resources and all, but afterward I mean it has been some sort of depletion is happening. And this is a very recent data I'm just presenting in front of you, and especially in my latest slide I will cover the numbers and all. But you look at the Uttarakhand and Himachal and other kind of a state, still there's a water scarcity is very high. Out of 95 kind of blocks in Uttarakhand, 78 has been indicated kind of water scare districts basically, or the block. And similarly in the Himachal also, and especially Himachal, Uttarakhand have been called the kind of the towers of water towers. It's giving you the input to various sources, be it various rivers and all. So still the kind of top end villages or the hilltops are facing serious problems of the water scarcity in the remote location. So this is another numbers which I would give you. Why the Springshed or the water conservation is especially very, very important. So this is one of the data in the for Uttarakhand. Like the 94% rural water supply system is fed through the Springshed. It's a gravity, and the gravity water is coming from the forest or the springs and all. Similarly, if you look at the Himachal Pradesh, 70% water supply system, the rural Himachal is again the fed from the springs. And similarly in Leh Ladakh, 72% is from the spring fed. So in a nutshell, because if you really wanted to look at the revised service level or the water availability at the household level, you need to really look at very carefully the Springshed management as an integral part of the water system. And again, it has to be woven very carefully along the community institution. You need to involve the community participation. Otherwise, I mean, in the plain area, what we are doing, we are just digging a hole, pumping the water and just, using all across, right? But this is not the case for especially the remote location, Himalayan region and all. The water is coming from the forest. If you'll cut the forest, if some, the new habitation will come up, there is a water quality issues. I mean, still, there is a very less, if you look at the water quality issues in Himalayan region, only the fecal contamination and coliform are there. We don't have very limited cases of the iron and all, but we don't have any chemical contamination in Himalayan region, especially in Uttarakhand and all. But this is how, I mean, we need to work around the water. If you need to, look at the community water systems and, for the new kind of a guideline, which is government is supporting. So again, this has been kind of a governed due to the various issues. This is one of the map for the aquifer. Basically, aquifer, there's a unit which retain the water. Basically, it's a kind of a bucket beside you or beneath you, or kind of a aquifer, your ground. So in Himalayan region, the water is coming as a kind of a fractures, if there is a kind of a lithology or the geology is fractured, so water will come from that particular point, and we call it a spring. In the kind of in plain region, it's remain with a kind of beneath the your systems, and then you need to pump the water from there. And this is one of the kind of data set from 1985 to 2010. The kind of annual average rainfall has been reduced by 5%, and again the monsoon rain has 7% has reduced, and the non-monsoon rain, which is very, very critical for recharging your aquifer, principal aquifers, or the perch aquifer. The Himalayan, you might have noticed there is a perch aquifer is there, but more than 30% has been reduced. So this is very, very kind of alarming situation. And what is happening? It is contributing to your lean season discharges, right? So lean season means May to June, especially there is a water challenge. Everybody is going around to just fetch the water from one end to another. and the woman, children has to, a lot of drudgery is there. Basically, they need to travel around 4 to 5 kilometers to fetch a 2 bucket of the water per day. So these are the kind of a challenge. So, we need to look at very carefully how, we conserve it, because some of the kind of aspect we need to control, or some of the aspect basically is a kind of a, geogenic, or some of the basically climate change and all, which is not particularly in our hand, but definitely we can look at how, we can reduce, or we can manage our water systems, more appropriately. And here, kind of a maximum, this is a kind of a vertical climate zone of Uttarakhand. Basically, if you look at this, these are the kind of up to starting from this is a plain region basically for Haridwar, Roorkee, or Dehradun. Still, I'm in Dehradun. They are just boring and extracting the water. This boring has started in Dehradun also, and now up till here, so there is a lot of pressure of it. So we need to work out when we are just planning our kind of a village action plan or any Springshed management plan. So all aspect has to be very carefully looked at, and then planning has to be done, because population, kind of a typology, or cultivation, all aspect has to be looked at. So because upper part where the kind of a pressure is really is less, so water demand will be lesser. So accordingly, that planning, water budgeting has to every aspect, including the kind of your livestock, every kind of a water budgeting needs to be planned accordingly. So this is the water security and the key challenges. So like as previous slide I indicated, like 60% the springs has been dying up. This is one of the report which has come up in 2018 by the Niti Aayog, and we were also partnering to it, and we have contributed that report. And that includes there is a various reasons, basically, not only one. A lot of people are saying the kind of a deforestation, climate change, because it is a kind of a combination of various aspects, basically, right? And then the water demand is gradually increasing. And if you look at the new guideline of the government, under the Jal Jeevan Mission, they have revised their service level. Initially, it was a 40 liter per capita per day to the hilly region, right? And that too, in every 4-5 kind of a household, you need to put a stand post, and the people will come up to 10 to 20 meters, and they can fetch the water from that particular household. But as per the new guideline, the revised service level is 55 LPCD liter per capita per day, and the functional tap connectivity at the household level. So how you will get the water? So this is very, very important to just work around your Springshed or your water resources bodies and all. Thus you will able to just get the water. Otherwise, meeting the requirement of the 55 LPCT is going to be very, very critical. And other aspect is basically especially in the hilly regions, people treat it kind of a subsidy from the forest. We need to incentivize it, and the poor operation and maintenance system has to be looked at. The government has given a lot of provision to in the new guideline, but that has to be when we are just thinking how that aspect will be covered. So that is one very important thing, just to work around it. And the community aspect is very, very important. Basically, until we involve the community from the day one, it is not going to kind of a sustain, because you need to make them feel, because this is your resources. It's a kind of a common pool resources. They are the garden of that water bodies and the water kind of a systems. The village or the villages are owning to it, right? So in a traditionally, all the villages location has been kind of a developed where the water bodies are there. They can get water very easily, and accordingly the kind of distribution of land, or the kind of different type of land, one few kind of a fields is in beside the rivers where they can grow the paddy, and upper system where they can have the water access. So accordingly that the system is there. But now this is for the last around 2 decades, is basically missing now. Is going, we need to again involve the community, and develop a kind of a feeling around their water bodies and the water budgeting, why water is needed, and how that water is giving them incentive. If they have the excess water, they can just, the drudgery will reduce, and they can grow more crops, right? And the cash crop can be grown, the kind of household income can be increased. A lot of kind of indirect benefit will happen. The water quality will be good, so kind of a waterborne diseases kind of a number will reduce, and they will have a less medical bill. So all this aspect through the behavioral change or the community involvement we can do. And every gram panchayat or the kind of the village council, there is a water committee. This is a kind of a registered water committee, so that committee can be kind of used for this purposes. And again, you can just that capacity should be with the gram panchayat. I mean, how water should be measured, what parameter has to be taken, small kind of a test or the water quality testing. So all this aspect is very, very important. So we have developed this system basically starting from identifying the problem, then taking villagers to that particular field areas and involving them. There is a 5-6 kind of a step, and accordingly then involving, and then only guiding them technically, and then ultimately handing over all the assets to them for future operation and maintenance purpose. So that will give you them a kind of a security. This is done by them only, and it will remain with them. So all this kind of a planning is very, very important. So again, this is a kind of a governance structure which I'm talking about. So again, government has given a lot of fund from the 14th Finance Commission also, and lot of schemes, funds available. That funds could be kind of used for this water security and water management systems. So these are the kind of different protocol which we are following. But similarly, in all the state districts, this facility is available, so that could be leveraged. So this is one of the kind of, I'm showing you one chart. Basically, this is one of our site where we have been working for last almost 2002, almost 15-16 years. So initially when we started kind of this is trying to indicate like community involvement is very, very important. Otherwise, I mean it will the source or the water availability will reduce, or it will go disappear sometime. So like 2009 when we initiated, the water level has started depleting, right? So then we started discussion with them, and we have identified the catchment area, involved them, and just the treatment has happened. And again 2012 the water level has again come down, and we involved them again, and then started the desiltation work or intervention or the intervention. And then again after 2-3 years, that intervention has has again used, and we have identified a few more areas and involved the communities, and the recharge work has happened. So this blue line is indicating the spring discharge from, it has reduced from, and the 9 LPM, and then after the treatment it has gone up, and now. And this yellow line is indicating basically like if the spring, if we'll not treat the spring, that this is an artificial ground recharge work. So if we started in 2009, if we'll not do any kind of intervention to that particular spring, so it will disappear by 2040. So that's how, I mean, we are trying to educate communities in a simpler manner. This is a kind of a statistical modeling, right? But that involvement of community, understanding that point, like your involvement is important. So that aspect has to be kind of brought to the table and at the discussion point. So still, I mean, community is very, very friendly. And this is the kind of how we have taken this overall aspect to the central level or Government of India's and the state level. Like then after the Niti Aayog report has come out in 2018, then we have initiated the discussion with the state forest department, because especially in Uttarakhand, if you look at the 53,843 square kilometer, out of that 90% is the kind of a reserve forest, and that is governed by the forest department basically. So we have discussed with them, because in the reserve forest you need to take permission from the government just to treatment, because a lot of sources discharges are coming from there. So they're agreeing to it, and we have made our Springshed Management Consortium, and which is kind of a lot of civil society member, government line department, experts are partnered to it. And the government has the fund available through various schemes. So they are giving that kind of a funds, and the experts and the civil society organization is helping developing the detailed technical report, capacity building, and that planning is happening. So now they have taken up that work in various Springshed sites and just taking it forward. And again, there is another system in especially in Uttarakhand, the One Panchayat, forest councils. So they have also kind of started doing the capacity building of various level, and they are taking it forward to the at various Springshed sites and villages. And again, we have done some working and made one kind of booklet which has been inaugurated by Honorable Minister and other members. So this will help build the capacity at the field level also, and help villages to understand why water is very, very important and how they need to just build their water planning. And similarly, we are doing some sort of kind of artificial glacier work in Leh also, which is again this is some modeling basically. So how much water is needed? This is water is coming. So we made these trenches, and after in winter basically the water will freeze here, and during the summer the water will come up. So they can just use that particular water for drinking and for the kind of agriculture purposes. So this is another kind of a area where the water, so we need to properly plan our thing. And similarly, like in the urban, water crisis is there. So we have taken few kind of state, basically Simla, Mussoorie, and Nainital. This is the some of the districts, and this is Uttarakhand, and one is the Simla, is Himachal Pradesh. So again, the water demand and water kind of availability, there is a kind of a lot of kind of a difference in between. So important point is basically the older bodies are kind of a depleting due to the various reason, which is a construction, overpopulation, water demand. So that the like important aspect is we need to conserve the water bodies and usage water optimally, and how one water concept or the at the village level is being used. So that is one important aspect. So otherwise, I mean, the water will remain very kind of limited, and demand will definitely gradually will increase. So this is another kind of a field experiment which we have done in the 400 around 200 villages we have mapped in one of the block in Uttarakhand. And we have taken a sample of 23. So like, after 2 years, basically in 2016 to 18, basically there is a lot of increase, around 48% increase has been noticed if you just properly identify the catchment area and treat it properly. Like the average kind of area is around 5 to 7 hectares. So, and again, some work on the revival of the lake. One small lake has been revived in that area in Uttarakhand only, the Irani Lake. And again, I mean, it's a 2-year work. Basically, this is a kind of a previous picture, and after work has happened on the catchment area, the water has come up and it's kind of a revived. So important suggestion, basically the building the knowledge at the grassroots level, the ownership should have happened with the Gram Panchayat, because they are the custodian. From the upper part, I mean, we definitely kind of guide them, build their capacity. But important how we can just make them kind of as a partner to this program is very, very important. There is a lot of fund available within the government system. So that needs to be done. And the kind of one model which has been created in Uttarakhand in the Springshed management, so that could taken up to other areas also. So these are some of the observation from our side, and this is the end of the presentation from me. So if you have any kind of question or queries, we can take up after the Divyang presentation, or as you suggest.
So we can take
yeah,
questions, because I think it's a very interesting case study to share, and I just would like to, for the interest of people's understanding, based on this Uttarakhand, Himachal and Leh experience, the trust has also started work on Springshed management in Nagaland, Arunachal and Mizoram, and Vinod has been supporting those initiatives. And I think in Nagaland, Mizoram, because it's all like 90-95% resources are based on springs, it's very important that those areas need to be treated through community participation. And we have got a very good learnings in these states where I think the community have started taking ownership of the springs, as well as also the government has also started realizing the challenges on the Springshed. So I think that way we not only look at only working in some area, but also trying to advocate it to the other geographies so that, you know, the successful models could be adopted in multiple regions of the country. But we can open for the questions now, because I think this is a specific subject and case study. So we can take questions and then we can go to the other part of the presentation.
Thank you, sir. Fellows, you can ask the questions from the sir by raising your hands one by one. So you can ask the questions. Okay, Nivya.
Good afternoon, sir. Actually, sir, I think you just said one point, and it was about the funds from the government and the Springshed management. If you could just, like, elaborate a little bit more on this thing, because I didn't really get that point.
Yeah. So, like, I don't know whether you noticed the guideline of the Jal Jeevan Mission. Like, this is a new flagship program of the government of India. As I indicated during my presentation also, the service level, where if service levels means, like, everybody has one kind of a share of the water. So especially in the Himalayan region, earlier the 40 liter per capita per day. If you have a kind of a, 5 kind of a members in a family, roughly they are saying so, like, 200 liters. So that label has also been revised. So again, what they are saying, like, like water budgeting and the kind of a village planning, the Springshed management should be kind of a very integral part of the plan. Right. So this is one. So when you are just developing your village action plan, they are calling it now, it's a kind of earlier they call it a detailed technical report. Now it's just a village action plan. So village action plan will comprise your this water security plan also, because it's very, very important. You cannot generate the water. You need to conserve it, protect it, right? Through the only the input is rain. Rain could be converted into icebergs or the kind of a frozen ice, or it will come to the river, or it will charge your aquifer, right? This is the point. So the fund is with government also. Manrega scheme is there, like watershed directorate is there. There is a watershed fund is available, and a lot of regeneration plantation fund is also with the government and the in the forest department. And the forest department has a one very important fund is the Campa, like. So this is for regeneration of fund for the Springshed or other part. So under the government guideline, they are indicated that fund those kind of leveraging of the fund could be used for the catchment protection work. So this is how, because specifically government is currently looking the kind of infrastructure cost. Other part needs to be leveraged, but not necessarily like other CSR fund is available, other government non-government fund is also available. So that could be leveraged to develop your water conservation plans.
Thank you, sir.
Just to add, I think Vinod's point, because I think the government would like to look at now more convergence approach. Convergence approach means Narega, you must have heard about. Narega is basically, obviously it's an employment guarantee scheme, but at the end of the day, they also would like how community or a village level community assets should be created. So more and more resources as a panchayat, because panchayat is now has a power to decide where they have to invest these resources. So that way the government convergence helps in terms of if you educate community, if you help them in building a plan, they can create this investment coming up from the government, either the finance commission or MNREGA. So the educating community is important, and at the same time creating a blueprint for them कि ये पैसा कहाँ पे कैसे लगा सकते हो और उससे आपको क्या फायदा होगा. Once they understand कि ये मेरी priority है, they can definitely start investing in resources and converge from the multiple. Obviously, the government is the largest stakeholder in terms of investment, but there are many others. So World Bank has a program specific for a hilly region. There are other multilateral agencies who are actually funding such programs. So that way there are now, I think, the interest from many organizations, CSRs. I think if you look at in India, last year investment in CSR itself is close to 25,000 crore. Now, even if you can actually leverage 5% or 7% towards this kind of issues, I think that's a huge amount of resources which could be mobilized across.
Thank you, sir. Now, Badal wants to ask a question. Badal, go ahead.
Sir, you have mentioned various case studies and your approaches about restoration and rejuvenation of lakes and springs in the hilly regions mainly, whether it is Northeast or Uttarakhand or Leh Ladakh. Sir, I want to ask, is there something happening from your trust end for the restoration of the ponds in the plain regions, like is in the Gangetic Basin or in the Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh?
So Divyang is the right person to answer that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there are two approaches. Obviously, one is called Springshed and second is called watershed approach. I think you must have heard about watershed approach.
Yes, sir.
We generally don't get into the pond, but yeah, we have been actually in 2-3 states. I will give you 2-3 examples. In most of the cases, we do a watershed approach. So plains would require a watershed approach. So ridge to valley approach, where you need to actually look at the watershed. What are its geohydrological situation of that particular, and accordingly you do either the surface water storage, groundwater recharging, stuff like that. So that we have done. But specifically in pond rejuvenation and other, we have a very comprehensive program in Maharashtra. And Maharashtra, if you look at the Vidarbha part, Maharashtra has something very 100 years old ponds were there. It's called Malgujari tank in Yavatmal and Amaravati region. Now those have been abandoned. Unfortunately, because of that abundance, the water availability becomes a challenge. So we have taken up with the government of Maharashtra a project on rejuvenation of all these tanks. It's a big tanks. It's like millions of water could be stored in those tanks. So we are trying to revive those tanks and use it as a conservation efforts in Maharashtra. So we do that work, but our major approach would be broadly either the microshed based or river basin based approach. And in most of the parts, but that we try to do it for only linked with the agriculture, means irrigation management, because drinking water, you need to do a very small scale interventions on water harvesting, conservations or something like that. But on irrigation management, you need to look at more scientific approach, either the watershed approach or you need to look at the river basin approach. So that we also do it in states, as I mentioned, Maharashtra is one of the largest state where we have a very strong presence in water. In Gujarat, Rajasthan, Karnataka, Jharkhand, all these states, we have a very good program on water conservation efforts. So yeah, that's the answer to you.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ujjwal, go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Okay, thank you so much for this amazing lecture, sir. Presently, I'm in Nainital, Uttarakhand, and I've been, it's my hometown, and I've also been to Mussoorie and Shimla and lived there quite a while. So I'm well acquainted with all the threats that you were telling us what they are faced. However, there was one thing, sir, that I really wanted your insight on, and that's the presence of forests that have like kind of aggravated the situation. And typically, I'm talking about the commercial foresting that was like it pointed out to like the plantation of pines, etc., and that have like caused desertification of hilly regions. So how do we plan to combat such a thing? And it's like it has been done, and it is being done from so many years. From Britishers to the forest department as well. So how do we combat such a thing at a massive scale?
Yes, Ujjwal, thank you very much. Right. So 2-3 points to your kind of question. One would be like the history of Britishers and all, like the pine has been kind of roped in all the your places in Nainital, Moda, Mussoorie, all for different purposes. Like Kardgodam has been placed named due to this, all the logs used to come over there and then used for the different purposes, right? So still now the issue, the challenges is you cannot cut it after 1,000 meters. I mean, so you need to take the permission from the government to cut any kind of falling of trees, be it kind of a pine, be it deodar, be it Quercus leucophora, any kind of a plantation. So that's how you need to rope in to the government bodies or the forest department if you really wanted to change the kind of your kind of a presence or your kind of a system, because these are the kind of bodies which has been regulated by the government. So if you wanted to do a lawn, so you can do 1 or 2 springs revival. If you wanted to change or if you wanted to create a model, you need to involve the line department. Like as a civil society member, we can just tell them we can do some kind of a modeling research. So one of my paper basically, which we are trying to indicate, I can share you later that paper. Basically, yes, the broadleaf are bigger contribution is kind of if 1% is giving you the pine needle, so pine forest, right? So the broadleaf, especially, just I have done some of the research part in Pithoragarh only. So that is a broadleaf is like mainly the Quercus leucotrichophora, which you call the branch or the right. So this is giving you the more than 2.8% greater than as a pine leaf. But here the kind of approach which Divyang was trying to indicate at the watershed is a kind of a bigger approach, right? Where you need to treat more than 200-300 hectares of the area to get a kind of a optimal kind of a outcome through that, which include water is one of the component, right? But especially in the Springshed management, we pinpoint the area. It's a kind of a IV approach, intravascular kind of a, you need to give the drugs through that. And that particular point or the particular area has to be identified, which could be 3 to 4 hectares, right? So especially that point has to be identified, and then accordingly treatment plan has to be developed. It could be kind of a low cost. We don't kind of recommend very kind of a cement work or the stone work, like the inverting the trenches, like plantation could be one of them, brushwood check dam could be one of them, right? And digging the holes and all, so which can give you the kind of a water inside your aquifer or the water bodies, right? This is the one of the approach. So if you are in around Nainital, if you have opportunity to visit some of our sites, so that is far off from your place, but Pithoragarh, we have done some very good work with the help of Gram Panchayat, One Panchayat, and forest department. So if you get some time, so you can also get in touch with them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Vinod, can I also ask a question here?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm just, this is very interesting concept because we all has been hearing about watershed in the sector. So Springshed and Springshed management is something it's not the narrative that water sector people have heard much about. And the kind of work that is happening is really, really huge. So here, and you said you have been working from last 15, 20 years. So in any panchayat that you intervene or any region that you intervene, how's the exit strategy work out? You say now we have done enough work and now it's of its own. This is the institutional system. So exit strategy and exit in that, what kind of institutional mechanism that are being placed?
Yeah, very important point, and which is the kind of a backbone to your success basically. So like as I mentioned in my presentation, institution and involvement of community is very, very important. Until you do that, I mean, it won't survive, it won't sustain for a longer period of time. Like, it's a very kind of when we enter to village. So as part of our approach, when we start discussion, just to identify a kind of a need-based assessment. So we start discussing with people, right? Have a meeting with them, interact with them. What are the issues? What are the challenges? It's a kind of an open discussion. That's why, I mean, the presentation may looks like a very scientific or kind of a statistical modeling, but I'm a purely by my heart I'm a social scientist. I involve with community. I sit with them, discuss with. That's how you can just get the insight, especially interacting with old people who have been there for many years, like 60, 70, 80 years old people. If you identify, stay with them, ask them what are the challenges, why this is happening, they will provide you the insight. And then developing the kind of a kind of ownership or institution, the government has already created a system out there, but a lot of people don't know about it, right? The Gram Panchayat, as I said, like there is a six committees. The water and sanitation is one of the committees is there. This is a kind of a legally accredited and validated by the Gram Panchayat or the Panchayati Raj institution, right? So you need to revive them. They are the kind of the Sarpanch or BDC members are the member to that committee, and you can re-elect them. You can start them, and then when like the one of the model to create the ownership is the kind of the involvement in terms of money, in terms of direct cash, in terms of their contribution through the labor and all. So then when we start, we create a bank account. They are the kind of a people who has to operate. That transparency is also very important. And then they 10 or 15% contribution of the capital cost. For example, one specific kind of a plan costs 100 rupees. The 15 rupees has to be come from the community, and each and every household to contribute in that part. The scheme started, so they are the people, they need to work. We only act as a kind of a knowledge center, knowledge bank, right? And tell them to do it, or if specific help is needed from outside, that we bring in. So that's how the start kind of involvement, participation is a participation and demand driven approach, right? And then once we exit the plans, so there is a kind of a full-fledged system. We ensure all the system for specifically the water systems. So they create a operation and maintenance fund, right? And afterward, they also appoint a person which they call a village management worker. So who operate and maintain the system. And afterward, there is a kind of a fund provision under the Gram Panchayat also. Every kind of financial year, government provide them 50-60,000 rupees for management the systems also. And especially under the new guideline of the Jal Jeevan Mission, they are saying after, if you will manage your scheme well in up till 1 year, so 10 to 15% of the contribution of the capital cost will be given to them for operation and maintenance purposes, right? So these are the provisions available with them. And if there is a demand, this is based on my experience, right? If there is a demand and participation, the sustainability is there. I can show you some of the very good example where we worked in 2001 and 2. Still, you can just see the systems, they are working functional, they are managing well. So this is how important is community aspect. Otherwise, if there is no demand, there is no community involvement, so it will, they will not take care of it. So this is how the system works basically.
Yeah, thank you. I think the O&M and other systems, that's very, very important part of it. Thank you for sharing, Vinod. Yeah, Divyang, I think we can continue.
Thanks. I think there is a question from someone. Dipesh would like to have a question.
Yes, sir. So basically, sir, I am from Maharashtra, Gondia, nearby Malgujari tanks only. And I did my dissertation on Malgujari tank. What is the process behind rejuvenation and the restoration of this tank? So, sir, mainly it is found that there is a deepening and the desilting work is done. There is very less amount of work on ecosystem. So what do you think, how Tata Trust is working? Is it also the same way, or there is some guideline for ecosystem?
Very good question, I think. So as I mentioned, this project is being done in partnership with the government. So obviously the government priority first is to restore this by desilting and stuff like that. So that's the first set of work what we do. But as I think if you remember, I think what Vinod has mentioned, I think we would like this to sustain, not necessarily down there in 5 years again they need a Tata Trust or a government to desilt and restore the things. So I think the next part of our agenda is to work with the communities, where I think the community institution need to be created, or a water user group or something can be created, and they can be educated to work on a larger ecosystem, not limited to, because you need to also strengthen your bunding by doing some kind of a vegetation, so that your soil erosion and other things could be reduced. So that's I think the next stage where we are planning to work with the government. Unfortunately, last year we supposed to start some interventions on the ecosystem establishment. Unfortunately, because of the COVID, we could not do. But that's I think the thinking behind long-term engagement with the government and with the community in that front.
Yes, sir. And sir, apart from this, TCS also did a work in Malgujari tank in 2017-18, and it provide 30 crore for Malgujari tank in Vidarbha region. But unfortunately, there is a corruption between this fund flow in the news. So what do you think about this? So how can we sustainable those tank who has much a million of hectare irrigation capacity? I guess
I think
1.25 million hectare.
I won't be able to comment on the TCS part because I'm not aware about that particular investment. So it's unfair for me to comment on that. Um, but I think I definitely agree with your point. I think there is a huge need to revive the tanks, which are traditionally contributing towards the larger ecosystem restoration perspective. I think obviously the government is quite positive about it, and I think our partnership with the government is also looking at it in terms of we don't want to just build this something for the sake of building. We not want to look at because Vidarbha, maximum I think the drought I think Vidarbha has been facing, and I think it has its own socio-economic challenges. So our idea is to work with them, and with the communities to look at the sustainable solutions. So obviously we need to continue working on that front for a longer period of time. Obviously we are, because as I mentioned, everyone has a finite resources. So as a trust, we may invest some part of resources, but we need to actually become a more catalytic role and influence the government to adopt a right model for implementation. So that is the direction where we, I think, moving on in terms of not only investing resources, but at the same time trying to build some kind of a good operating model which can sustain for a longer period of time.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Dipesh. I think the very, very good points I think you are making, but some of them are, I think, beyond my control, so I don't want to answer those things. Sorry for that.
Yeah, it's okay, sir. Yeah.
Okay, Solka, shall we continue?
Yes, I think, yeah, yes.
Okay, great.
Divyang, if you allow me, I have another meeting to catch. So, ma'am, thank you very much for having me, and good luck to all. Right.
Thank you very much, Vinod. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, pleasure. If you have any specific
liberty to ask you to come back some other time if we need to, because the kind of hands-on experience.
That's what I'm telling you, ma'am. If you have any kind of a specific pointer question, so please feel free to get in touch with me or Divyang. So we'll be definitely would be happy to join the.
And you can switch on your camera. We can just click a picture, please.
Sure. Now this is gone, so.
Yes, then fellows, if you will also like to switch on your camera so that we can have, yeah, thank you, Sandeep, and I will wait. Yeah. Wait. Thank you. This is new trend now.
Thank you very much. And
thanks, Vinod. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Divyang. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you all. Bye.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think we talked about the water scarcity in hills. So that case study, what Vinod very rightly shared with you. So I hope you've got a good understanding on it. So now we go to the next part of the challenge is about the water access part. And I think this is also a bit linked with the Jal Jeevan mission, which yesterday Devendra Tapolaji might have also spoken about it. So I just, again, not getting into too much on the details, but important to capture some specific numbers in terms of the non-pipe water supply system. And when I say non-pipe, means the availability of water is far away from home. So 100 meter, 200 meter, sometimes 2 kilometers, and it differs. Actually, the drudgery part differs from the plain area to hilly region. So, for example, what Vinod mentioned about it, and I think in a hilly region, even if you have to go just 200 meter downhill to fetch water, it's like 2 kilometers walking in the plain. So that way the drudgery is important part here in the water access subject. And again, as I mentioned in opening remarks, after 70 years or 75 years of independence, we are still talking about the basic right, the right to water, about providing safe drinking water to every household at the doorstep. So that's, I think, the irony of the situation. Nevertheless, I think if you look at investment happen in last, you know, uh, 40, 50 years. So in distribution system, in creating a distribution system, India has invested close to 3 lakh crore rupees investment in last 40, 50 years on creating a drinking water infrastructure. And you can understand the numbers. 3 lakh crore investment and coverage is around 20 to 25% of the households. And now the government of India under Jal Jeevan Mission has allocated 3.5 lakh crore investment in next 5 years to cover remaining 75-80% of the households. So you can understand in last 40 years what investment has gone, and now in next 5 years how the investment is going to cover it. So that is the, I think, the idea. Again, the diversity part is very, very visible here. So you can see the dark red zones, which are 10% or less than 10% of the tap connectivity in that particular district or particular state. So you can see that Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha, part of West Bengal, Rajasthan, and the whole northeastern states, they all are falling under the either the 0 to 20% coverage, which is a national average, below the national average. Remaining some states which are very outlier, I would say Gujarat, Telangana, part of Maharashtra, Punjab, they are outliers, and they have a 50-55% of the tap connectivity. Gujarat has around close to 78%, and Goa is, I think, Goa and Pondicherry has become one of the first states to achieve 100% tap connectivity. So that way they are outliers, I would say. What are the challenges for that? So one, obviously the infrastructure is not available. So the lack of in-village infrastructure is the biggest challenge in terms of having a water at doorstep. Second, the water source, which I think Vinod recently talked about. So over a period of time, our water sources have been drying up. So for example, a village which has a pond, which I think my other colleagues from our team has already talked about, that pond, because of silting, it's not having the similar amount of water, and then the water source within village are drying up. So either village have to depend another 10, 15, 20 kilometers away the sources. So dependency on source is dynamic, and that's why it's created more problem about the availability of water at the household level. Third part about the lack of capacity of local communities. Now, I just will give you one small example. When you go to a village, okay, and then if that village has an overhead tank, bada sa pani ka tanki, and if that tanki is having some technical issue and because of pani nahi aa raha hai, if you go to the village people say कि ये सरकार का टंकी है और ये सरकार ठीक करेगा. बट इसमें सरकार पानी पीने नहीं आती है, कलेक्टर पानी पीने नहीं आता है, कोई और बाहर का पॉलिटिशियन पानी पीने नहीं आता है. तो वो टंकी तो पानी तो गांव वाले ही पीते हैं, बट दे से कि ये गवर्नमेंट ने बनाया है इसलिए ये गवर्नमेंट का रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी रहता है. हियर द होल concept of ownership comes, and I don't know whether you all have heard about the 73rd amendment of the Constitution, which basically talks about transfer of functions, functionaries and funds to the local panchayats or local institutions like Gram Panchayat or urban local bodies. So 73rd and 74th amendment basically talks about how we can provide money and people and responsibility to the panchayat, so they become more self-reliant, they become more sufficient with their own resources and managing those resources. And here the case of local communities come up, because large part of the country's communities or panchayats feels this system is to be managed by the government. They are not responsible for that, and they have not built their capacity to manage it. And hence the maintenance is very poor, operation maintenance are very poor. So even if a small pipeline फट जाता है गांव में, people wait for 3 to 4 days to get someone from the government come and repair. वो 4 दिन महिलाएं दूर पानी भरने जाएगी या फिर आप बाइक पे कोई पानी भरने जाएगा. तो that way the whole ownership element is being very much missing in the water supply infrastructure. Government that don't have that kind of human resources to manage. India has 6 lakh villages and around close to 15 lakh habitations. in government don't have that kind of human resources to manage each and every village ka water supply system. That's why the community panchayat has to build their capacity to manage these systems. Kerala is one of the best example that panchayat manages most of the village level infrastructure facilities as well as the services. So health, education, water, sanitation, all those things being managed by the panchayats in Kerala. That's, I think you must have heard about that model also. तो इसके ऊपर मैं एक छोटा सा केस स्टडी I'll just take that case study first, and this is basically an integrated project in Gujarat. So this case study will help you to understand कि आप पीने का पानी जो है उसको कैसे एड्रेस कर सकते हैं, और उसके बाद में एक और केस स्टडी ऑन टेक्नोलॉजी पे थोड़ा आपके साथ शेयर करूंगा, so you get both the understanding in terms of experiences of the trust. Now this specific case study is of Gujarat, and this case study actually covers a period of our last 5 to 7 years of work in Gujarat for providing safe drinking water to people, specifically the communities in rural Gujarat. Now, when I talk about Gujarat, most of you might have actually thought of that, oh, Gujarat is quite progressive state. Hello, can you hear me, Alka?
Yes, sir, we are hearing you.
Yes, sir, we are able to hear you.
Sorry. Okay. So when I talk about Gujarat, I think most of the people will find that Gujarat is a quite progressive state. Why the Gujarat would require this? But I think Gujarat faces two different challenges. One, Gujarat has the longest coastline in the country. It's 1,600 kilometer long coastline, and India is around close to 6,500 to 7,000 long coastline. So Gujarat has the longest coastline. Now, because of the longest coastline, Gujarat also has been facing a very severe issues of a salinity intrusion. So the sea water, which has come up to 25 kilometers of the inland, and because of the water quality becomes one of the biggest challenges in coastal region. And that's why I would say Gujarat may not be having an economic poverty, but they have a water poverty challenges. Obviously, in last 5 to 7 years, some situation has improved, but still this salinity issue is very, very high. The second challenge is on a tribal area. So if you look at the eastern part of Gujarat, which is around 11 districts are tribal, which are hilly, similar to what Uttarakhand Vinod mentioned. So those are hilly region, and because of hard rock, they also have a very limited water sources, and they also feel very high water scarcity issues. So because of these two water poverty challenges in Gujarat, we have actually started working in Gujarat around 5 years. Second factor for working in Gujarat, because we wanted to demonstrate a model at scale, because as I mentioned, we have a limited resources. We can't solve the problem, but if we want to address a larger scale problems, then we need to build a partnership with the government, because they have most of the resources available with them. So we may need to play a more catalytic role. So this project is more as a catalytic role which we played, and we worked as a scaling up model. Gujarat has a high dependency on the groundwater, scarcity water in summer that was very, very high in specific areas of tribal because they don't have a groundwater available. Health issues because of both quality and quantity issues. As I mentioned, the saline water creates more issues on the kidney stone, and the severity of kidney stone disease is so high. Sometimes 11 years old child has to go for 3 kidney stone surgeries because it's a recurring phenomena. We also need to understand that every household has to spend substantial amount if they don't have a water available. So in some of the coastal region, people have to spend around 1,000 to 2,000 rupees specifically in the summer season to get the water from the either commercial market player or people because they don't have a local sources, or the government sources are not sufficiently supplying them water. There are electricity issues in the country, and at least Gujarat also has some specific areas as electricity issues, and because of the remote locations, they face a power failure and they don't get they can't pump the water from the ground. So this is the broader problem statements. What we have done in Gujarat, so we have actually done a quite unique approach. So when I first talk about the water, sanitation and hygiene, we need to look at it into integration way. We can't look at water separate and sanitation separate, because sanitation is one of the reasons to contaminate water. So open defecation will have a more will contaminate the groundwater sources or surface water sources, and that if the people continue that unsafe water, they will fall ill, they will have to invest in the medical and other costs. The challenge in Gujarat, because the water and sanitation is being taken care by two different departments. So water is being taken care by the water supply department and sanitation is being taken care by the rural development department. Now these two departments never converge. So what we have worked, we worked as a bridge. So we created this specific project to cover around 1,000 villages, and we say ki we become a bridge between these two departments as a non-profit organization, but we bring them together to find a right kind of a solutions, so that for sanitation you need a water, so that's a complementary efforts, and to have a safe water you need to have a more sanitation unit, so people should use the toilets at household. So that way it's a complementary approach, but we need to build that bridge between these two departments, because both have funds, but if these funds are not effectively being leveraged at the village level, the situation will not improve. So what we have played a role, we said ki we will find the solutions, because this requires some kind of a specific approach based on the regions. We find out the right operating model, we find out the right kind of solution, and we find the one institutional interface. So we created village water and sanitation committee that becomes an institutional interface that work with the both department and bring that leveraging money. So Panchayat will get money from water supply department for setting up a drinking water infrastructure, and Panchayat will get money from the rural development department on a household level. Now we built the capacity of a panchayats, so that they create that blueprint, they create that village action plan, they create that whole financial requirement plan, and then the government can pull in those resources, because they know that this is a high quality village action plan being prepared, community has agreed on it, community has agreed to contribute towards this. So those tick marks, those principal features of that particular program is being tick marked by the community, and hence government is easily can give. Our role is more as a catalytic. So our role was what? We supported the community to create an institution. We provide them technical options, ki what technical option you want to choose from. And then we said ki government, this is the village action plan vetted by an independent agency. And now if it satisfies your requirement, you should give and transfer the fund to them. Now that helped a lot to the panchayats to become self-reliant for water. They have become open defecation free villages. So those things have been done. These are some of the districts which we have covered. Dangs and Dahod is in the tribal region, and in coastal region, 9 districts and around 800 villages we have covered. So you can see the scale of work. So in coastal we have covered around 884 villages and around close to 150,000 households. And in tribal, we have covered around 372 habitations and around close to 15,000 plus households. Now, this is the project, which is where the Tata Trust becomes an interface or a common player. I think this is one of the largest public-private partnership program which has been done in the country. Not such kind of a scale program has been done in India before. And I will come why this is, I think, very critical to work on. So these are some of the outputs. I don't want to get into the outputs. So there are multiple outputs. So we have created a communication campaign for close to 1,000 villages. It has been implemented. So you can understand this, the size of or the scale of the campaign on behavioral change being undertaken. Covered around close to 200 schools for providing wash infrastructure services. Covered close to 162,000 households of having a toilet. So that way you can see I think the scale is an important. There are some areas where we found key rainwater harvesting structure at the household level is important. So we have covered around close to 2,000 households with that kind of a work. On source strengthening, specific areas in coastal region, we worked in around 60 villages. Obviously, again, we have invested in that particular schemes. We have covered around 550 villages with water supply system. So the idea is that we actually worked on multi-thematic interventions into a single geography, and where our investment, so the total investment of this project was around close to 200 crore. And out of that, the Tata Trust investment is only 15 crore. So you can understand that the investment what we brought is a 10% of the total investment. But the larger investment which has come from the government, directly gone to the community through direct cash subsidy transfer or directly going to the village water and sanitation committee. So this is the model where we would like to demonstrate that the government has the resources, organizations need to build an ecosystem and catalyze that fund to be effectively being leveraged. So this is the broader idea of this scale project, what we have implemented in Gujarat. You can see the impact part. So household connectivity in tribal region, there was 10%, it has reached to 89%, coastal 32% to reach to 90%. Functional tap connectivity across seasonal aspects. Coastal has a higher functional tap connectivity. Tribal still has a challenge about the seasonal availability of water because they don't have a groundwater sources. Toilet usage has gone from 11% as a baseline to around up to 85% as a usage. In coastal region, it has gone up to 88% coverage and 89% usage. Households have reported diarrhea, no diarrhea in a period of last 6 months, 84 in tribal and 94 in coastal. So this is the huge health impact we have achieved. 95% respondents started washing hands with soap after defecation. This is a huge jump in terms of the achievement on basic hygiene practices. This is an important element. Overall, 70% have started new income generation activities. So people who could save that time from fetching water or going out for defecation, they could start some income generation activities, and 15% have more time in current occupation. So either they are in agriculture, they've started getting some more time in that spending into occupation, so they don't have to hire a labor. So indirectly, they might get some more, better income enhancement for that particular. 81% respondents now spend not more than 30 minutes in that. So this is, I think, the scale, the impact which one can achieve through the collaborative or a public-private model. So that was the one thought I wanted to share with you as a case study. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take it up, and then we can go to the next part.
Yes, Padil, you can ask a question.
Sir, in your talk, you have mentioned about working with the tribal people for even for their basic facilities. Then there must be some challenges that were faced by you and your organization while working with the tribal people. Like they are not like the communication challenges or any other kind of challenges.
Yes, so I think the tribal communities, we found there are two challenges. One challenge is because in all our programs, we have to have a 10% community contribution. So communities have to pay 10% towards the capital investment. So for example, if we are investing 10 lakh rupees in creating a drinking water infrastructure, 1 lakh rupees has to come from the community. Now the tribal communities, because they don't have that kind of a cash available, they found it difficult to come out with the cash, and it takes some time. Sometimes it takes because they either migrate on some cash, come back and give, or they could do some kind of a after Kharif season, once they get their income after selling their crops, they give that money. So that took a lot of time for us to engage with the community. So that was one basic challenge we found. But what we actually also found a solution to that. So because tribal community don't have a cash, we actually asked them, can they contribute into a labor? So rather than giving a cash, they spend around 5 days, 6 days of their own labor to either dig the trench or doing some labor work for the construction activity. And I think that got a good imagination of the community, and rather than paying 1,000 rupees or 500 rupees per family, they have started doing a contribution in a labor. So that actually helped us a lot in addressing that whole community contribution aspects. That was, I think, the one biggest challenge we found. Other than that, because in tribal, tribal areas they don't have a very big social issues. So women were in most of the tribal communities, we found that women are very, very proactive and they come in all meetings, they participating into designing schemes, they participating into O&M of schemes. So they are very, very positive. So that's, I think, the good learning which we got in tribal areas.
Okay, sir. Sir, I want to ask one more thing regarding the tribal area. Sir, is there any place where you feel opposition, like you don't come here, don't do anything here, something like that? Like the doctors are facing with the vaccination or testing?
Okay, yeah. No, thankfully, I think we didn't find this because they know that. See, when we do any interventions, we generally try to understand what are the communities' need and what are their priorities. Okay, so for me, because I am working on a water project, my priority is water. But for community, that may not be a priority. So when we do a initial meetings with them, we orientation or a participatory rural appraisal, we try to see that how this issue of water, if it's in a, let's say they're in priority number 3, we try to bring it into priority number 1. Why? The reason behind that, as a collectively, when they start coming together, they realize that there are a lot of issues which are, I think, important for us, but on a pros and cons of that particular issue, they need to prioritize into 1, 2, 3. So I think in most of the cases, we found 1, 2, 3 as either the water is one of the biggest challenge they found, and that's why we didn't find okay, aap yahan pe mat aao, mat karo. There are some specific communities. I know that and not recently, but I think around 7, 8 years back, there are some communities in tribal, and they feel that they are a santan of God, and everything in the world is being created for them. So there is a specific, very small community, but they never actually contribute. So आप कहेंगे कि one of the criteria of project to contribute, they will never contribute. They will say, okay, we will not contribute. This is a God's water. We are not going to, contribute anything. So that we found it into small scale. It's a specific community called Devipati or some community. So there we found that challenges.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Any other question, or we can then go to the next part?
We can go to next one, I think, and down the line in the final discussion, we can have that. You're also muted now, muted.
Okay, so the third aspect which I'm just going to speak about is on water quality. So water quality, I think many of you might aware, but just for the interest of everyone's understanding, India, we have two kind of a water quality contamination. One is chemical contamination and second is a microbiological contamination. So chemical contamination is more like fluoride, arsenic, iron, salinity, nitrate, and heavy metals, which you can, I think, see that number of villages in the country are facing these issues, specifically about the chemical contamination. Microbiological, it's E. coli and other, which I think the data are not easily available. So data, because it's not being regularly tested, that's become a challenge. Chemical contamination requires some kind of a treatment process. It's a bit of a high cost treatment process, or a high tech treatment process would be required to remove the chemical elements from the drinking water. All these issues, all these water quality issues have a very direct impact, harmful impact on the health of communities, health of people or human body, and hence it's important that how we can do that. The trust are focusing only on two larger challenges on water quality. One is the fluoride and second is arsenic. Arsenic is a carcinogenic in nature, and fluoride, I think most of the water sources, many parts of the country, the water sources are very much highly affected because of the fluoride. Fluoride has an issue also on health impact. So it causes fluorosis, which is a crippling disorder, which can, because of the fluoride which is entering body, and the fluoride can go either through water or also through food chain. So these are the two areas we found after some studies, that these are the two areas which I think we as an organization should work on. And the reason behind that, because it requires some more investment, it requires some more technology advancement. And I will share with you the story on that. This case study I will share about the technology-based solution. So as I mentioned, arsenic, you can see this arsenic issues, specifically the northeastern is basically a gangetic belt, which you find arsenic, and arsenic is the geogenic in nature. So it's basically comes into a geohydrology because of that particular formation of your subsurface soils. This will actually become things, and you can see this some of the issues, how this actually impact. It has a very huge issue on skin as well as the cancer. I don't know whether you have heard about it or not. The Northeast and Assam has the highest cancer cases, and one of the reasons is for that is about arsenic. What we have done, because arsenic can be treated by multiple ways, and we actually tried one technology. So majority of technologies are linked with the high capital investment and high energy consumption technology. And because of in rural areas, both the things are challenging in terms of availability of an electricity, and second is availability of a cash by either the government or by the community. So these are the two issues which we found that we need to look at better solutions for that. So we actually used a hybrid ion exchange, which is called HIX Higgs technology, which is a zirconium loaded and anion exchange resin platform. So this has a high affinity for removing the both arsenic and fluoride. So this single technology can remove both arsenic and fluoride from the water. It has one limitation, the TDS of that particular water should be below 1000. But when you have a fluoride and arsenic on a high in range, generally the TDS is not very high. And I think in most of the cases in the country, the arsenic and fluoride is mainly available into inland, not in the coastal region. So that is the idea with which this technology has been used. Now, this is the system where we need to create a borewell or groundwater, and then we need to put up into our raw water. You can use the solar panel. The important part of it is it can work on a gravity-based system. So it doesn't require a very severe electricity in terms of a three-phase electricity. Only a single-phase electricity to pump the water from the ground, and maybe if you have to put up into the elevated reservoir, you need to that much of electricity you require. But otherwise, the electricity is very low requirement, and because of that, the implementation becomes a very easy. When we started this project, it cost us around 10 to 12 rupees, but now this has actually reached, this has come into around 6 to 8 lakh rupees investment. So it doesn't require too much of investment at the community level. And this can cater to 300 to 500 households water. Every day they can get around 20 liter of water, 20 to 25 or liter of water. Generally they get it. We have been working broadly on a 1000 liter per hour capacity model. Now, what are the benefits of it? So, if you compare it with the other technology, for example, the reverse osmosis technology is an alternative to it, but reverse osmosis technology wastes 50% of water, and it can give you only, so if you actually treat 1000 liter water, 500 liter of water may go as a reject, and only you can get the 500 liter of water as a product water. And hence the environmentally it's not good. So you have to treat a lot of water to get a small amount of water. So that's why this technology, which can give you a 90% recovery as against the 50% recovery in reverse osmosis. So that way it's a better technology in terms of providing better recovery. So environmentally it is not so challenging. Second, the lifespan of technological solutions. So this can actually go up to 8 to 10 years of life cycle, and we need to do only maintenance on annual basis. But I think the 10 years of life cycle is very good for any technology-based solutions. Generally, most of the technology you need to replace into 5 to 6 years or 4 to 5 years if it's being efficiently managed by the local community or any other sector player. So that is the idea, and that's why the 8 to 10 years is really a long duration to get a better technology based solution. So you don't have to invest into too much into your replacement cost. Third and very important, it requires, as I mentioned, the energy cost is less than 80% of the reverse osmosis what it use. So 5x lower than the energy cost which is required by the reverse osmosis technology. In rural area, it's like really very good, because when you reduce your energy consumption, you can reduce your overall operation maintenance cost, because energy is very costly input for most of the technology based purification systems. So that way, the system which has been installed now in close to around 10 villages in Assam funded by us, but this system has also been now done on a large scale in West Bengal and now also in Bangladesh. In India, we are trying to promote that this kind of a technology can be used on two ways. For this particular village in Nalbari in Assam, we have created a community institution and they have contributed 10% of the cost. And currently they are managing the operations of it. So they have actually hired a social entrepreneur from the village. They are paying him a salary, but the idea that it should be a user pay model. So they have decided that the 5 rupee 20 liter cost, when they started this project, they've selected 5 rupee 20 liter cost for every user. And it has now been increased to 7 rupee 20 liter. And because of that, the around 90% households are taking water from this plant. But at the same time, it's being all 100% O&M cost being managed by them. So after initial investment of 8 lakh rupees by the Tata Trust, we have not invested a single rupee, and this system has been up and running since last 5 years. So you can understand 4 years. So you can understand that in last 4 years, the community has already invested on the operation maintenance, which is around 70 to 80,000 rupees a year. So that way the investment has already been made by the community, and they are already operating and maintaining the system. So this is the one story which I think case study I wanted to share with you in terms of the technology solution. If you want to have any questions, I can go. Otherwise, I can take you to the second story, and then maybe we can go to the question answer. Yeah. Okay. Can I go ahead, Alka?
Parul?
Yes, sir, we can go ahead. I guess nobody is having any question right now.
Okay. So this particular case study is basically using a technology for creating a real-time data for managers as well as users. And when I say users, it's a community, and managers, it means basically a government. So this project, as a pilot, we have recently implemented in partnership with the Government of India. And our idea is that we identify the right technology. The government has to play a role to take it on a scale. What are the issues in rural water? And these are all because of the unavailability of a data. These are all issues related to data. So if you look at the currently 30% of rural water supply schemes fail primarily because of the poor maintenance. Okay, and the poor maintenance or a water source depletion, because no one is monitoring either the maintenance cost or no one is monitoring the source depth or availability of water in that particular source. So 61% of the groundwater reported loss in water, as I already earlier mentioned in my earlier slides. Regular disruption in most of the cases in rural India. Every day or alternate day, they are facing some challenges, either the breakage of the pipeline or there is an issue with the overhead tank, chlorination is not happening, all those things. And the last point, which I also already mentioned, that the government doesn't have that kind of resources or human resources to manage and support the management of a in-village water supply system. So currently, sometimes a single engineer or one staff has to manage 50 to 100 villages, which is a huge, and if you look at the range of that, it's around 200 square kilometer to 300 square kilometer. So the mobility is a challenge. That's the one. And second is about the availability of that human resource. If technically they are not sound, they will not be able to cater to this 100, 200 villages in a one go. This is again, as I mentioned earlier, the value chain: source, treatment, pipeline, and distribution network. In a village, if you see any village, this is the basic system. So there will be a one source, either river, borewell, whatever. There will be a one intake chamber. So there will be a pump. There will be a small treatment system. In cases 60%, 70% treatment is required, they can keep, otherwise they don't have. Then we have a clear water reservoir. So the water which is after treatment, it being put up into a one water reservoir. And then to provide a water through gravity system, they create an overhead tank, elevated reservoir, and then water provides every household. Now, during this whole value chain, you can find a lot of challenges. So for example, if you are not managing, if you are not monitoring data on water source, if you extract more water, your source either will dry up or you have a water quality issues. Your pump assembly will fail if there is a not inefficient intake by pump. So that's the another challenge you find, and the cost of the pumping machinery is very, very high. If you don't have a better output, if you don't know the water quality, you don't know what kind of a treatment technology you need to put. And if you don't have appropriate technology solutions, then the failure of the technology is also become very, very high. The last part is about overflowing of the storage. So if there is most of the cases, 95 to 99% cases, the systems are being managed manually by operator. So he has to go either early in the morning when the electricity comes to start the pump. The water reservoir will overflow if he doesn't switch off the pump. So that way there are a lot of dependency on the manual interventions. And at household level, we don't know whether the 2-member family which is using 100 liter of water and paying maybe 50 rupees a month, and at the same time, if 6-member family which is using, let's say 300 liter of water, are also paying the same amount of water tariff. So irrational water tariff is another issue. So it's not a volumetric based billing, it's being done very generalized way. So that's why how this operational things can be addressed using a technology based solution. Take a one step back, why these technology based solutions are important and how this is going to help you monetary way. So as we mentioned earlier, that if you don't have efficient O&M systems, you may lose 120 to 130 crore rupees for a state. Okay, now this amount is maybe may look a little smaller, but if you look at combined all these three costs together, a small or medium sized state can save close to 1,000 crore of rupees investment every year. Now this is a huge amount if you have a better efficient systems in place. So that's why this macro perspective on some anecdote data, we have actually calculated that how this can help in terms of saving both direct cost as well as the indirect cost about the opportunity cost loss. So that's why this is important on a macro perspective. We have created an IoT architecture. So we have created systems where this is our hardware. So we need to have a different sensors. We have actually tried India-based sensors, globally available, best possible quality sensors to pilot this project. We have used the different networking systems. So we have a GSM, GPRS, RF, or LoRaWAN. There are multiple systems, and we tried different systems to understand the efficiency of every system so that we can recommend the government or we can recommend the other sector players to use the system. Cloud system. So this is basically how the data can come into some specific centralized server and how this dashboard could be created. And I will take you through the live dashboard also, which will give you the real-time data and information. So these are the information on IoT architecture we have created. And this is something which how IoT works in 4 steps. So IoT sensors, which are attached to different assets or drinking water infrastructures, starting from the source to the household, that generally gives you the data points through sensor system. Part 2 is about the wirelessly all this data comes to a cloud services. And this third is about this data is visualized on a mobile or a web dashboard. So any engineer can see the data on their mobile phone that which village has which problem. So which household doesn't get a water problem or doesn't get a water or irregular water, limited water, or not a specific quantity has been supplied or not specific quality water is being supplied. And at the end, we actually use this analytics for a helping the water managers or an engineers to do the better solutions for the particular system. This is basically some photographs of our value chain. We design solutions, we install the all equipments, we maintain for a period of 1 year, and then we create a cloud application which is now available with the government. There are three kind of a system because every system will have its own cost. So we promote ki either because if it require a high investment, either someone can go either with the basic or intermediary system. So India has around, if let's say 6 lakh villages and 15 lakh habitation, if every village need to be put up into this kind of a dashboard, then you might go only for the basic system. But there are a number of villages which has a population more than 5,000, which would require some advanced monitoring. So there you can go with the intermediate system. So that way we have designed this solutions ki if someone has a more money, can go up to advanced system, which can actually every household could be measured. But sometimes it's overkilling of resources. So you don't need to measure that every household has got water. You can actually create a system where you can measure a few specific cluster of households can have got the water or not. So that is the broader idea of creating three different mechanism for water solutions. The cost of that, if you go for a basic system, your capex investment is around 80,000 rupees to 1,50,000 rupees. If you go for an intermediate system, it costs you 3 to 4 lakh, and if you go for an advanced system, it can go to 8 to 11 lakh rupees. And your OPEX cost is also, in the range of 3,000 rupees per year to 50,000 rupees per year. Now, here the important point is that if you go for a economy of scale, so if you go for a, let's say 1,000 villages at a time, then your cost of the capex can go down, can be reduced by around 40 to 50%, and your OPEX can be reduced by 30 to 40%. So we promote that the villages or a government should actually look at a larger set of villages. So either they go with the whole district with the IoT system. So they have a 1,000 plus villages, and then the investment can be reduced. But I think the efficiency helps to save this money. As I mentioned earlier, 1,000 crore a year. I think you can recover this money in over a period of 2 years of time by installing this kind of a system. We have done this work in Gujarat, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Uttarakhand, and Himachal Pradesh, and now Andhra Pradesh. So I just would like to say why we have selected these geographies. We have actually taken 4 different architecture, parameters. So one is we have looked at the different operating condition. So Uttarakhand is a hilly region where the network connectivity would be a challenge. Gujarat is a tribal area where we have looked at the groundwater based system. So water will come from the bore well, so we can also measure the water table by putting up a sensor in the bore wells. Rajasthan is again water scarce, and there we have used a more solar based system. So that's a single village system which is being run on a solar. So that we have used. And Maharashtra, which is a more than 10,000 population, dam is providing the water. So we have looked at the different parameters to create an architecture. So we actually test all scenarios into a real-time situation, and based on the learnings, we can say the government, okay, now this is something which we have demonstrated. You can either use this technology or a combination of this technology for implementation. This is the photographs of Uttarakhand, where you can see the hilly regions. This is in Rajasthan. It's a tribal dominated area, around 35, 40 households. And we have put up a full-fledged system. Every household we have covered through water metering. Now, this is the output, what we are getting. Now, Vinod mentioned that as per the government norms, every person should get 55 liter water every day. So the government has responsibility to provide water 55 liter every day to that particular person. Now this data point of particular date on 2nd January, it mentions that particular day the water has been supplied only 11 liter per capita per day. So it's actually 1/5 of the standard norms. Now once this data is available to me on a dashboard, the engineer can understand that there may be some problem with this particular data, a particular village, because all households have got average 11 liter capita per day water, and hence there's a problem and I need to fix that problem. So rather than him going to a village, he based on the data on sensors, he can identify what is the problem, and either he can ask a technician to solve that problem, or he can ask the village operator, ki you have to do 1, 2, 3 to solve this problem. So he even doesn't have to go that particular village. So it saves time, energy, and efforts of that particular engineer to going to village, find out a problem, and then solve the problem. Rather than that, he can look at everything into a mobile dashboard or a web dashboard and then address the challenge. Second, we also need to provide this information to community, because it's not, the information is not only important for the government, but it's also important for the community. So for community, we have created a dashboard in a local language, and then small TV has been placed there. So they can understand कि हमारा पानी का ये 6 पैरामीटर हमने आइडेंटिफाई किया कि प्रतिदिन कितना पानी मिले. Now that particular day they've got 35 liter per capita per day. So whether this is good enough or not, or it's a moderate, it's not bad, but it's a moderate. So they can say, okay, but we need to fix some problems so that we can get a 55 liter water available. Second, we test water through sensors. So they say कि ये पानी साफ है या नहीं है. For them, it's very easy to understand. Visually appealing होना चाहिए. कोई पढ़ नहीं सकता है तो उसको पता होना चाहिए. Whether the water is coming at the right pressure, so it's a tick mark. टंकी का लेवल क्या है, तो जो भी टैंक है वो कितना परसेंटेज भरा हुआ है, पंप चालू है या बंद है, और वाटर का जो टेबल है, भूजल स्तर है, वो कितना है. So this information helps them to understand a very basic things, but understand कि whether their system is efficiently being run or not. Okay, this is a dashboard. I can just take you directly to the dashboard, and that will help you to get the information. Alka, just you have to, or Payal, you have to tell me whether you can see the screen or not.
We can see the screen.
Yeah, sir, the screen is visible.
Okay, great. So now this is a, you can see a India map, and it's a real-time thing. So you can see we have done a pilot in Dehradun, we have done pilot in Himachal, one is in Rajasthan, Gujarat, and Maharashtra. So these are the things which we have done, and you can see here the name of the villages. So I will go to the one village where there is a advanced system. So all the parameters have been taken into consideration. Okay, so this is the Gharat village in Rajasthan. So this left side you can see a real time, you can zoom in, zoom out, key GPS location and everything is available. So you can click on some specific button there. You can see कि वो क्या है, वो कौन सा है. So इसमें you can see the type is consumer flow meter. The latitude longitude is already been mentioned here. It has been installed in 12th March 2020. The last maintenance which has been done on 3rd December 2020. And who is the field technician? So you can see कि every asset which has been installed have been that asset का data आपको मिल जाएगा real time कि whether that asset is functional or not functional और क्या challenges. यहाँ पे आपको गांव का details मिलेगा. So there is what is the population, households, what is the scheme type, which year this has been commissioned, what is the source of water, how many hours this is being supplied, treatment technology क्या है, storage capability क्या है, village chairman का नाम क्या है और उसका phone number क्या है और water tariff क्या है. So you have all basic information of that particular village available on your dashboard, and it's a real-time basis pay. Okay. Now today is 23rd July. So you can see this 23rd July last data which has come is around 2 hours and 37 minutes. So this data has given, this sensors have given me data last at today afternoon at around 2:37 minutes. What is the water which has been supplied today? So today we have supplied 7,600 liter of water. This is a yesterday data because आज की शाम में ये पूरा change होके आज का data आ जाएगा. Average LPCD of water, as I mentioned, 55 liter is a benchmark, but today they have supplied 42.7 liter. In last 7 days, they have supplied 42.7 liter water in that particular village. You can see the benchmark of 55. In most of the cases, this has not been meeting the benchmark, but this is meeting the moderately benchmarked of that particular village. You can see the chlorine sensors. So this is a benchmark कि chlorine 1 से ज़्यादा नहीं होना चाहिए और 0.25 से कम नहीं होना चाहिए. तो इस रेंज में क्लोरीन होना चाहिए, but you can see that the chlorine has gone up in some days and some days they have not done the chlorination. So I can simply call that particular village and say कि आज आपने chlorination नहीं किया, आपको chlorination करना है, and hence they will be able to do that. And what is the pressure? So pressure is maintained well because in initial year times this has been maintained well, and last that pressure is also under the control, but in between there was a challenge. So you can call them and say ki why the pressure is so different. So that way you can get the data from that particular. This is the water quality data which we have been capturing data, and you can see this here. Yeah. So this is the pressure sensors data details available for that. This is a groundwater table. So you can see on 12th February 2020 depth of water is 46 meter, whereas 46 feet, whereas at this point of time it is a 52 feet. So you can see the water table has gone down by 5 feet in last 1.5 years. Now this helps me, and you can also see it has gone up to 61 in the month of March because it's a high summer, more water is pumped, or the water table has also gone down. So based on this data, you can actually work that whether you need to do a water conservation, rainwater harvesting to strengthen this water source. So down the line 6 months or a year में मेरा पानी खूट ना जाए, मेरा पानी बंद ना हो जाए. So this is the data which we get it. This is the pump operation, कब चालू होता है, कब बंद होता है, everything you can got, vault you can get. Then yeah, this is the data which I have shown you earlier. ये रियल टाइम डेटा है, वो मैंने आपको 2 जनवरी का दिखाया था. ये आपको 58 LPCD आज के दिन में मिला गया है पानी. सुबह 9:04 पे इसका लास्ट डेटा आया हुआ है. पंप स्टेटस अभी ऑन है, इसका क्लोरीन आज नहीं हुआ है, 0.02 है, सो इट्स नॉट गुड. एंड 60% ESR का पानी लेवल टैंक भरा हुआ है. Okay, and this is an household level data points. So I can see that the एक घर जिसका नाम मागी बाई के घर पे है, उसमें 4 लोग हैं, उन्होंने आज कंजम्पशन किया है 700 लीटर वाटर, एंड उनका LPCD आ रहा है 175 बिकॉज 4 लोग 700 लीटर. तो ये इंडिकेटर बताएगा कि उन्होंने ज्यादा पानी यूज किया है. ठीक है, तो आप उस घर को जाके बता सकते हो कि आप पानी ज्यादा क्यों यूज कर रहे हो. आप कुछ और केटल धोने में कर रहे हो, गार्डनिंग में कर रहे हो, किचन गार्डनिंग में कर रहे हो. आप दूसरी जगह पे देख रहे हो ओडी बाई का 8 फैमिली मेंबर्स है, उन्होंने सिर्फ 400, तो एवरेज उन्होंने 50 लीटर का यूज किया है, तो उनका ग्रीन आया है कि हाँ वो मॉडरेटली वाटर यूज कर रहे हैं. लाशी बाई को आप देख सकते हैं येलो है बिकॉज उसमें LPCD बहुत ही कम आया हुआ है. सो इट्स बेसिकली मेजरिंग इन डेटा कि आपका इक्वल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन हो रहा है नहीं पानी का, और उसके बेस पे आप कोई डिसीजन ले सकते हैं या नहीं ले सकते हो. सो दिस वाज द बेसिक आइडिया ऑफ अ टेक्नोलॉजी यूज where power of information can be provided to the communities. Okay, so I'm just going to the next. This is basically a system which has been installed in 11. But अगर आप लास्ट का जो ये लास्ट मैप देखेंगे, ये जो उत्तराखंड का मैप हमने एक सैंपल जो बनाया हुआ है, कि अगर आप उत्तराखंड के हर एक गांव में if you put 100% villages with this IoT system in Uttarakhand, you can measure कि which district has a better efficient systems and which district doesn't have a better efficient systems. So your investment can be designed based on your decisions based on your map कि हाँ इस districts में हमको either engineering team को ज़्यादा push करने की ज़रूरत है because उनका efficient system कम है, or accordingly allocation of operation maintenance could also be decided. So the macro level at state level or at the national level, you can take decisions based on this continuous or recurring information available to you. What are the benefits? So officials के लिए क्या है, improved service delivery हो जाएगा, effective grievance redressal. अगर किसी को पानी नहीं मिल रहा है, वो कह सकता है कि मुझे पानी नहीं मिला, और वो डेटा दिखेगा बिकॉज उसमें ऐसा नहीं है कि मैन्युअली कोई हाँ बोलेगा कोई ना बोलेगा. So effective grievance redressal mechanism हो सकता है, and enhancing the life of the water scheme. So आप अपने systems को better manage कर सकते हो. So your system will be running for instead of 10 years, it will run for 20 years. So the efficiency could be also be enhanced. वो गवर्नमेंट के लिए है, इंजीनियर के लिए, बट पानी समिति के लिए क्या होगा, यानी कम्युनिटी के लिए क्या होगा? इट क्रिएट्स अ ट्रांसपेरेंसी. सो मेरे गांव में 50 लोग हैं, एवरीवन इज गेटिंग द सेम equal pressure water or equal amount of water. If no, how can I rationalize this water supply? it can reduce the cost of operation. So if I have most of the things automized, I don't have to put up a people or a manually to do that. And also it can improve the public health of people, so that it can reduce the waterborne diseases, because the chlorination is happening every day. So all those parameters are helpful for the community. So that is the broader, that is the end goal or end objective one can achieve through putting up a system. Now, some of the learnings. So in some of the areas, so earlier consumption of data identified in a cluster of 6 households not receiving water consistency, but because they were not knowing about it and they were like into a secluded place, they didn't even complain someone. But once we put up a system, this data says that this particular habitation is not getting water, and hence we have to fix that valve and provide them water effectively. So sustainability, as I mentioned, the village which has got some issues on the faster depletion of water source, they've done some source strengthening work by augmenting the staggered recharge structures, so that their aquifer will be recharged and more water will be available to them. Wastage has been reduced substantially. Elevated reservoir quality overflow nahi ho raha hai abhi, because they have put up automated pump controls. So it saves a lot of water to in your village. And I think you can also see this as a larger macro level पे आप देख सकते हैं कि ये system काम कर रहा है या नहीं कर रहा है. So this is the on a technology number 2, which I think is currently being adopted by the government of India, and now government is actually like for example, Goa state is currently being planning to do 100% villages with covering IoT based systems. Manipur is doing 1,000 villages. Gujarat is doing 1,000 villages. So I think our demonstration with technology helps government to scale this project in multiple states. So that's the experience which we have actually influenced. And again, playing a catalytic role, knowledge player, a thought leader in that water space. This is the learning on the technology. If any questions, I'm happy to take it up. Otherwise, we can go to next.
Can you share the link of this IoT based thing, because this is very interesting. If you just put in the chat.
I just give it to you. Yeah. Just give me a second. I'll give you.
What was the budget of this particular initiative?
So we have done around 12 units, and we have spent around 20-25 lakh rupees investment on this.
Overall for
this. So human resource cost I'm not calculating, because my time, some of the engineers, other people's time, we don't calculate that. So that would be an additional. Obviously, it takes almost a year to demonstrate this stuff, because we have done it in the multiple geographies, identifying the right vendors, identifying the technology. We use a LoRaWAN system, so creating a Wi-Fi network within a village. We have used the GPRS systems, talking to telecommunication technologies, how best we can use it. The battery life should be for 3 to 5 years. So lot of engineering has gone into it, but I think it's worth, because our small investment of, let's say, 25-30 lakh rupees, now leveraging millions of rupees investment by the government. So as I mentioned, government of Goa government is actually doing 100% villages with the systems. Manipur government is doing one full district, which is covering around 1,000 plus villages, full district. Gujarat is doing around 500 plus villages. So I think the adoption is now, there is a confidence in the system. So the government is started investing into it. So I've shared with you a link.
Yeah, we got it. So Ministry, yesterday, Dr. Devendra was talking about the similar thing then, same thing.
It must be. So we have a small team at Delhi, which is working with the government, and we have a team on ground, which Tata Trust has. So they executed the program. The larger macro thinking happened at the national level with the teams at the national level, with me and my colleagues who have been part of these discussions.
And if I can ask a rudimentary question, where is the sensor placed in the village?
Okay, so sensor placed in advanced system in some villages we have put in every village, every households. So जो tap होता है उसके पहले हम लोग sensor रखते हैं. So whatever. No, household level पे रखते हैं हम लोग. So household पे जब
the main line of the household.
Exactly. तो एक ही टैप होता है, रूरल में तो एक ही टैप होता है, तो वहां पे हम लोग we put a sensor there. We put a sensor into a borewell. So borewell में आपका सेंसर का जो डेप्थ आपका क्या है, that you can measure. Then we have put up a chlorine sensor. So chlorine sensor generally जो आप ट्रीटमेंट करते हैं, पानी जहां से जाएगा गांव में, वहां पे रखते हैं कि उसमें आपको डेटा लेना चाहिए कि वहां पे ट्रीट होके जा रहा है या नहीं जा रहा है. So that way we put up a sensors into multiple levels and create a communication tool. So we, if a LoRaWAN, then we use it in some central location जहाँ पे आपको थोड़ा all Wi-Fi local Wi-Fi network बन के वो आपको डेटा वहाँ पे भेजेगा.
And the data you get it filtered or rework on the data before it comes. No, it's a very it is a real system.
Yeah, so I think the power of information when it comes raw, but so the dashboard is the output what we have created. So there are a lot of other data which may available, but we don't use it for a dashboard. So we use it for two purposes. One is the central government to monitor the data, and second for the users. So users को हम लोग अभी WhatsApp message जाता है कि भैया आपके घर आपके गांव में आज आपने 15 लीटर LPCD पानी दिया, आपका क्वालिटी ये था, आपका बोरवेल का ये डेप्थ हो रहा है, तो उनको एक कुछ रेड अलर्ट भी जाता है if there are some high risk elements in that system. So we don't have to worry, everything is being done monitored, remotely monitored. So the idea कि अगर एक engineer 100 से 200 गांव संभालता है तो उसके लिए तो ये एक बहुत ही handy system रहेगा, because he doesn't have to travel to 50-100 kilometers just to see कि प्रॉब्लम क्या हुआ उस गांव में, तो उसको सिस्टम से ही पता चल जाएगा. एंड यूजर्स कैन आल्सो प्लेस द रिक्वेस्ट कि ये क्यों हुआ है.
And how is this information being used for building capacity of panchayat, other committees or institutions in the villages or other area, and plus the users? Because one is the information available for managing and doing the governance part of it, but then at the end, the user and panchayat, do they know how to interpret the data and use it and enforce monitoring, and as well as building their capacities?
Absolutely. I think the our primary goal as a trust is to provide the knowledge and information to the users and panchayats. So all these villages has a water user committee or a village water committee called Pani Samiti. Now that Pani Samiti members, as I mentioned, either get a message on a WhatsApp or a SMS, and they have a dashboard there in a village, so they can go and see anyone in panchayat ki office mein hi hai, anyone can go and see the data. So that way the information is already available to them and they can take a appropriate decisions on that. Users के लिए ये grievance redressal system है. So for example, as I mentioned, someone is using 175 liter and someone using a 7 liter. So the person who gets a 7 liter can always raise an alarm saying that why I am getting a low water, and he doesn't have to prove that he is getting low water. His data is proving he is getting a low water. So either there may be a pressure issue or there may be some breakage issue. So that's why he is getting a less water. So he doesn't have to prove that. आज की तारीख में क्या होता है कि सब मेरी कंप्लेन होती है तो मुझे प्रूव करना पड़ता है कि मुझे क्या प्रॉब्लम है. But this data will help you to understand कि किसको प्रॉब्लम है और क्यों प्रॉब्लम है. So that's why the information with users help them to address their grievances very transparent way. It doesn't require any manual intervention, and no one can deny the fact of the data which is coming on real-time basis.
And this is the water for all purpose.
Yes. So
if it is water for all purpose, so the villagers, when they dig out their own submersible and all that, that is now will be controlled, or it will be a one central place in the village?
No.
Where not exactly?
No, this is basically currently piloted for the drinking water schemes. But if government thinks कि okay, जितने भी public water sources है उनको monitor करना है तो वो कर सकता है इसके through. So it's a low cost system. But for a individual household, individual agriculturist के लिए जो farmer है उसके लिए ये फायदा क्या होगा कि उसको इतना तो पता चलना चाहिए कि मेरा वाटर टेबल क्या बिहेव कर रहा है. वो आई थिंक मुझे लग रहा है बहुत ही ऑल टुगेदर डिफरेंट कमर्शियल वायबिलिटी वाला मॉडल रहेगा. तो अगर उसको उसके बेस पे फार्मिंग करना है तो आई थिंक मुझे लग रहा है कि we need to look at an alternative commercial operating model for that. बट इंडिविजुअल्स के लिए नहीं है, अभी कम्युनिटी के लिए ज्यादा हमने फोकस किया है.
Thank you. I think very interesting, and I think we can see that you have put a lot of effort in the entire presentation and session with different examples. It's really giving us insights. Yeah, I think Parul, I'll hand over to you to moderate rest.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, I guess Dipesh want to ask a question. Dipesh, go ahead.
Yeah. Sir, could you please explain me the tariff for the community? So how the tariff is managed by socially disadvantaged community? Is it the same tariff for all?
Interesting question. So I think if you have heard us from the beginning, we feel every system needs to be owned, managed, and maintained by the community. So all decisions are being taken by community themselves. So this all water committee or Pani Samiti, they are responsible for deciding it. So it's not I decide the water tariff. I tell them ki, okay, this system will have your annual maintenance cost is X. And because of this X amount need to be met from water tariff, you need to levy a tax accordingly. Now, some villages say ki, okay, we will charge 100 rupees flat for every household, because we find that every household should get an equal water and every household has a equal responsibility to provide. Sometimes some villages committees feel ki nahi, the bottom of the pyramid or a lower strata of cannot pay. We will provide them only a 50% water tariff they have to pay. They don't have to pay 100%. They have to pay only 50% because they are landless, they are laborers, they don't have regular income. So that's why they have to pay only 50% of the water tariff. So it all depends and decided by the community. It's not being decided by us or by the government, because it's basically the responsibility of a panchayats to manage. And hence this is important that we train them, we teach them how the inclusive approach need to be taken. So why disadvantaged communities should be provided equal opportunity, equal water, equal supply, everything should be common. We can't discriminate them. That's I think the what we educate them, and that's a non-negotiable principles what we follow. When we enter with the community, we say कि आपको अगर ये 3 principles agree है, community contribution आपको देना है, operation maintenance 100% आपको set करना है और inclusive approach करना है, तो ही आज आप इस project में जुड़ेंगे, otherwise हम लोग आपके साथ काम नहीं करेंगे. So those non-negotiable helps us in terms of creating more better ecosystem for the community for the sustainability aspects.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, any other questions, or are we going into the other questions, or I can just quickly, when maybe 1 or 2 slides I can share with you about how we have strategized it.
I think you can just finish it and then we can take overall questions then. Okay, fine. So I will just then go ahead on the some other slides. Okay, I will go to the. Okay, I think on approach and strategy, I just would like to touch upon. So what is the methodology we use? And I think most of you are maybe looking at how the strategies are being created. Okay, so we actually created a 2x2 metric. So we use a statistical model to come to a conclusion key what we have to do and why we have to do. Okay. I would not be able to share that 2x2 metric because it's not being yet finalized, but I can give you an indication that what we have actually used as a parameters for us to decide in which area we have to work. So there are multiple problems within water sector. As I mentioned earlier, water supply is a problem, water quality is a problem. Within water quality, there are challenges. Over extraction of water is a problem. Agriculture use a problem. Low water reusing the water is a problem. So there are multiple problems, but we can't solve all the problems. And hence we say ki, how we can create a high impact, and also we have an ease of implementation. Now, I would say ease of implementation say better rahega ki how we can effectively create a successful model to replicate in other parts. So that's why I think it's rather than ease of implementation, you can look at it a different way.
So on impact pay, what we see ki, whether the intervention, what we are going to take, whether this is going to affect the larger population or not. Okay. So the larger population in terms of the number of people. So the scale is the idea in creating impact. Second, how we are impacting health of communities, because health is something which is very critical, and water and sanitation and hygiene is a public health issue. How we are creating a positive impact on health so that the all other elements can be taken, productivity part, the medical cost, investment, all those parts could be taken care of. Third, at the macro level, whether we are impacting the economy of either household or that particular region. So that is an important element. So if we are actually having a better water availability into rural areas of that particular area, they may have a better irrigation system and they may earn better earnings out of it, and their economy will grow both at household level as well as the community level. So that was the one. And last is effect on environment. We actually would like to be more conscious about whether we are adversely impacting environment or not. So someone talked about the ecosystem. So whether we are working on ecosystem effectively or whether we are impacting ecosystems effectively or not, or at the other side, we are not creating something hazardous material for environment. So that way we are conscious in these elements of it.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, sorry.
Sir, are you presenting something?
Okay, yeah, I was presenting. I think it's not there.
No, sir, it's not visible.
Okay, I'll just check it out. Can you see now?
Yeah, sir, now it's visible.
Okay, I'm sorry for this, but you can see this impact that 4 parameters which I have talked about, extent of affected population, health, economy and environment. तो ये 4 parameters हम लोग impact point of view से देखते हैं. Ease of implementation, in terms of we want to see something ki, okay, whether we have some experience in that space or not. We do work on in innovation and other parts, but that's a very limited. We work, our investment should go only 15-20% on the innovation space, but remaining part we would like to look at the problem to be at large scale national priority should be addressed. So whether we have that experience in that, whether there are some kind of a replicable proof of concept available or not. So once you have a proof of concept available, as I mentioned earlier, that island of success is not going to solve the problem of the country. Okay, island of success means there are छोटे छोटे एक दो गांव में जो प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करके किसी ने बनाया होगा, जब तक वो स्केल नहीं होगा तब तक कंट्री के प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व नहीं होंगे. तो अगर वो रेप्लिकेबल मॉडल है, कैन वी टेक अप one solution which can be tried in 5 villages to 5,000 villages or not? So that's the idea with which we try to identify the proof of concept. The third part is about the government priorities. So as I mentioned, we play a more catalytic role in many parts. So how we can look at the government priority or budget allocation being done. So our investment is limited to 25 to 30%, and we expect 70% to 75% money come from the government. So our money are more efficiently being utilized for value addition, bridging the technical gaps, bringing up the innovation into that space. And last part is about the unit economics, the investment. So per capita investment is how much. We can't have, like, say, very abrupt unit economics कि एक गांव में जाके आप एक हाउस होल्ड के पीछे 50,000 इन्वेस्टमेंट करेंगे और उसका इनकम 10,000 से 20,000 होगा. ओके, दैट इज नॉट द effective way to impact someone's lives. Rather than उसको आप 50,000 का चेक दे दीजिए, maybe शायद से that will help him in enhancing his better quality of life or enhancing their income. So we need to look at how our 1 rupee investment is actually giving you a 10 rupees ROI. So yet unit economics and investment need to be looked at in a business perspective. And business perspective here I am saying कि आपका unit investment should be economically viable and the ROI should be substantially high. Otherwise, your model is not a good model. So your model is not a replicable model. तो वो चीजें हम लोग as an ease of implementation और I would say scale के context में देखते हैं. तो ये हमारी methodology है on interventions पे. तो ये based on that methodology, what vision we have built to create a healthy and water secure future for underserved communities by providing access to safe, assured and adequate water and improve hygiene services to sustainable approaches. And these are some 5 core objectives. We want to provide functional household tap connectivity. There are numbers, but I just don't want to share it right now. To address water quality challenges through innovative context-specific solutions at community and household level. to promote water security approaches to make communities self-reliant for their water needs, to create awareness among stakeholders through social behavioral change communication, and to build a resilient ecosystem by developing an institutional infrastructure. So this is the broader vision and objective what we have built for ourselves. There are some things, but I think I'm just skipping it. But we are currently working in 15 states in water space and around 90 districts where we have a field implementation going on. So this is the perspective for of our work. If you have any questions, please go ahead.
Yeah, SBCC you're talking about now, no, Divyang?
Oh, yeah, I can speak about, but I'll just take 2 minutes, not more than 3 to 4 minutes, so that I think we can do that.
Yeah.
So social behavioral change is a cross-cutting aspects for us. So you can see a vertical, as I mentioned, water access, water security, water quality is a vertical, or sanitation or hygiene is a vertical. But social behavioral change communication is a horizontal. So every sub-theme need to be addressed through social behavioral change communication. And why social behavioral change communication is important? Because we need to have a sustainable change in practices of a targeted communities. If we can't do that, whatever intervention we do may not be a sustainable. Okay. So what is the philosophy of a social behavioral change communication? So there are some things key. There is one thing, the knowledge does not translate to behavior. So for example, doctors know that smoking causes lung cancer, but one of the study reflects that more doctors smokes Camel than any other cigarette, and the Camel is very high tobacco consumption things. So in spite of having a knowledge, they are not changing their behavior. So knowledge doesn't always reflect into changing the behavior. So that is the one philosophy. Second, if you look at the right hand side, this awareness, intent, and action, this is a very classic example. So as a person, person has awareness. So person knows something, and person doesn't know something. Okay. So this is the cycle of the behavioral change. So person knows something. So for example, if I know ki cigarette consumption is causes a lung cancer, I know that. But whether I have an intent or I don't have an intent to change my behavior. So although I know that I don't have intent to change my behavior, but I have an intent to change behavior, whether I am doing a right action or whether I am doing a wrong action. So whether my intent is converting into action or not. Okay. So this whole cycle about awareness, intent, and converting to action is called a social behavioral change communication. If you all are interested to know more about the social, you can read a book called A Nudge. There is a Professor Cass Sunstein, US-based, one of the social behavioral economist or behavioral scientist. He has done this very interesting book. You can have a look at it, and I think you will find more aspect. And it's a very emerging subject. Many of you will find very fascinating that behavioral change is very important. The commercial space uses the behavioral change very aggressively. You know that the advertisement is based on the behavioral economics, but on the development sector also, this is now becoming very favorite subject. And I think many behavioral scientists are coming and using a different theory for work. So we have done one theory, and I just would like to share that theory with you. So we have worked on the behavioral change. So we took 3 behaviors. One is people have to store water safely and handle the water safely. That's the one behavior. Second behavior was toilet construction and use. So toilet construction is one behavior and toilet use as a second behavior. And the third behavior is hand washing with soap after defecation or before food. That's a third behavior. So this project we have started in 2016, and we have done something called a ethnography study. I think I'm not sure whether you have understood this part or not, but this has actually been part of a evaluationary psychology. focusing on the understanding of behavioral practices with regard to these objectives as I mentioned. So the ethnography study is basically a methodology which you do not by asking a questions. In most of the survey, you have observed that आप जाके गांव में जाते हो और आप पूछते हो लोगों को प्रश्न और वो आपको बताएंगे. Behavioral change में क्या होता है कि when you ask a question, the tendency is high that the community will ask you, give you a answer which you expect. So in terms of आप कहेंगे आप हाथ धोते हैं तो वो हाँ बोलेगा because उनको पता है कि अगर मैं ना बोलूंगा तो ये बंदा और ये पर्सन मुझे खराब समझेगा, गंदा समझेगा. So that's why the important aspect of the behavioral change को अगर देखना है तो it's on a observation. So ये जो स्टडी किया गया था उसमें हमारे जो behavioral experts जो थे, they stayed with people or family for a period of 3 days to 4 days without having any objectives. So they stayed with their family. They practice all those things with the family follows. So अगर family open defecation के लिए जाता है तो उनके साथ जाएंगे. अगर वो पानी भरने के लिए बाहर जाते हैं तो उनके साथ जाएंगे. वो उनके लिए खेती में भी जाएंगे. So they want to understand their mindset, how they are behaving, how they are responding to some of the physical environment को कैसे को respond करते हैं. And based on that they find out कि ये behavior के point of view से मुझे ये barrier है उनके लिए और ये motivation है उसको मुझे address करने की जरूरत होती है. और उसके बाद एक framework हमने डिजाइन किया कि there are motives. So there are emotional motives. So those emotional motives, we have identified 3 emotional motives as a part of our strategy. These 3 emotional motives, one is a disgust, second is a progressive nurture and third is affiliation. Disgust ये है कि कोई लोग कोई चीज नहीं करते हैं तो उसकी वजह से वो गंदे कहलाते हैं. So there is a disgust. So people आप shame करते हैं उनको. Okay. So for example अगर कोई गांव में टॉयलेट के लिए ओपन डेफिकेशन के लिए जाता है उसको शेम किया जाता है, उसको नाम देके उसको खराब कहा जाता है तो वो एक डिस्गस्ट वाली एक फीलिंग आती है लोगों को. बट वो डिस्गस्ट की फीलिंग समटाइम्स बूमरैंग होती है नेगेटिवली बिकॉज पीपल फील कि अच्छा तुम मुझे खराब कह रहे हो तो मैं खराब करके दिखाऊंगा. सो वो एक ईगो इश्यू ज्यादा बिल्ड होता है डिस्गस्ट वाली इमोशनल मोटिव में. बट वी फाउंड अ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग अबाउट द सेंट्रल मोटिव व्हिच वी हैव यूज्ड इज अबाउट अ प्रोग्रेसिव नर्चर. प्रोग्रेसिव नर्चर में हमने जब ये इथनोग्राफी स्टडी किया वी फाउंड दैट एवरी फैमिली मेंबर in a way want to do a progress in a life. So प्रोग्रेसिव नर्चर ये था कि एक एग्जांपल मैं दूंगा तो महिला को हमने सुना कि वो अपने बच्चे को ये कहती है तू अच्छा पढ़ेगा तो शहर में जाके अच्छी नौकरी करेगा. सो नर्चर के लिए है कि पढ़ाई नर्चर का पार्ट है बट प्रोग्रेस करने के लिए नर्चर करना जरूरी है. सो वो सेंट्रल मोटिव हमने यूज किया. और तीसरा था एफिलिएशन. एफिलिएशन जनरली आप लोगों को रिकॉग्नाइज करते हो, आप लोगों को रिवॉर्ड करते हो तो लोगों को एक लगता है कि वो एक नया नॉर्म क्रिएट होता है. सो आपके गांव जैसे कि अभी वैक्सीन की एक चैलेंज आ रही है हर एक जगह पे, तो वैक्सीन में बहुत ज्यादा नेगेटिविटी बैठती है. तो अगर आप गांव में जाके 5 लोग जिसने वैक्सीन ली है उसको आप अगर एफिलिएशन आप उसको रिवॉर्ड करेंगे और ऐसा एम्पलीफाई करेंगे कि बहुत ज्यादा लोग वैक्सीन ले रहे हैं, that will positively impact other people to change their mindset, change their behavior. Okay, so that's the important element about the affiliation. So disgust sometimes is useful for a very small way पे, but progressive nurture because महिला जानती है कि वो अपना बच्चों को अच्छा पढ़ाएगी, अपने बच्चे को साफ सुथरा रखेगी तो वो बीमार नहीं होंगे. हस्बैंड सोचता है अपनी बीवी को अच्छा दिखना चाहिए तो उसके लिए अगर शहर से आता है तो साड़ी लेके आता है, कुछ ब्यूटी प्रोडक्ट्स लेके आता है. सो बेसिकली कि अगर उनको सबको नर्चरिंग पॉजिटिव होता है तो वो प्रोग्रेस करेंगे लाइफ में. तो हमने वो कैंपेन किया था कॉल समझदार. सो जो आदमी ये फॉलो करता है प्रैक्टिसेस विल बी कॉल अ समझदार फैमिली और अ समझदार पर्सन, समझदार इंडिविजुअल. आई विल शेयर विद यू सम लिंक्स ऑफ फिल्म्स, यू कैन हैव अ लुक एट इट. बट वो बेसिकली हमने बिहेवियरल साइंस को पूरा यूज किया था. नाउ लास्ट पॉइंट, यहाँ पे 2 चीजें हमने दिखा सकते हैं. एक है सोशल एनवायरनमेंट एंड सेकंड इज फिजिकल एनवायरनमेंट. बिहेवियरल चेंज का सबसे बड़ा पॉइंट होता है कि आप सोशल एनवायरनमेंट चेंज करते हो. सोशल एनवायरनमेंट यानी कि आप ये बिहेवियरल आप चाहते हो कि ये लोग ऐसे बिहेव करें, उसके लिए आप एक एनवायरनमेंट क्रिएट करते हो तो लोग उस हिसाब से बिहेव करना शुरू करें. बट अगर फिजिकल एनवायरनमेंट नहीं होगा तो वो बिहेवियर लॉन्ग टर्म नहीं चलेगा. ओके, और कैसे हो सकता है कि अगर आप कहते हो लोगों के कि आप हैंड वॉश करिए बट अगर वो हैंड साबुन नहीं खरीद सकता है, that person will not be able to buy soap, how that behavior will continue? So you need to create that physical environment कि अगर आप कहेंगे हैंड वॉश करो तो उनके घर पे पानी होना चाहिए, उनके घर पे एक वॉश बेसिन भी होना चाहिए. तो दैट्स व्हाई हाउ टू क्रिएट अ फिजिकल एनवायरनमेंट इज इक्वली इंपॉर्टेंट, अदरवाइज सस्टेनेबल आपका बिहेवियरल चेंज नहीं हो पाएगा. इसमें मैं आपको थोड़ा मैं बता देता हूँ उसका इम्पैक्ट क्या है. हमने 6 स्टेट्स में 2000 गांव में अराउंड 3 लाख के आसपास हाउस होल्ड के साथ ये पूरा किया. एंड ये आया है हमारा डेटा कि 87% हैव रिपोर्टेड इंक्रीज टॉयलेट यूसेज प्रैक्टिसेस. सो जिनके घर में हमने टॉयलेट कंस्ट्रक्ट करवाने के लिए और यूज करने के लिए जो कैंपेन चलाया था उसमें 87% अभी यूज कर रहे हैं. इनिशियल baseline I think could be around 10 to 30% based on different states की categorization पे, but largely 87% households have been uses toilets. 90% respondents are washing hands with soap after defecation. So that's a substantial high because we found it initial baseline was around 30% to 35% in across regions, and 89% households have reported no cases of diarrhea. So this is a huge number with whom we have worked, and based on the data we found that these are the impact we could achieve. So this is the behavioral change. थोड़ा मैं फास्ट लिया because उसका थोड़ा साइंस समझना था, और उसका कुछ हमने एक्टिविटीज कैसे करते हैं हम लोग उसको मैं थोड़ा आपको जस्ट दिखा देता हूँ. सो ये एक है कि इसमें समझदार इंसान प्रमोट करते हैं, समझदार परिवार प्रमोट करते हैं, समझदार समाज. तो एक आदमी जब तक पॉजिटिव प्रैक्टिसेस नहीं करेगा जब तक उसका फैमिली भी उसमें नहीं आएगा. और इफ द फैमिली विल स्टार्ट फॉलोइंग द राइट प्रैक्टिसेस दैट विल क्रिएट अ समझदार समाज और समझदार कम्युनिटी. सो इफ यू वांट टू हैव अ amplification, if we have a samajhdar community, a better community, we need to amplify all this positive impact of behavioral change to all members of the family or all members of the society. So that's the campaign we have done. We have run it in over a period of last 4 years, and I think it has been quite a successful campaign we have used. We have used multiple tools for that, जिसमें multidisciplinary show we use, and I think we have used the folk art very well because village में एंटरटेनमेंट के लिए सबसे बड़ा जो उनका जो एक पॉजिटिव इम्पैक्ट करने वाला होता है सोशल आर्ट. तो जो भी आपका पपेट शो होता है या ड्रामा होता है या सॉन्ग्स होता है, दैट इज अ गुड मोटिवेशनल फैक्टर एंड दैट हैज अ बेटर रिकॉल वैल्यू among the communities in rural India, what we have observed. We have done multi-thematic shows, we have done thematic shows जिसमें आप characters establish करते हो and that character goes within the community on a regular basis, so that creates that recall value, and those messaging given by these character stick to the communities for a longer period of time. So ये बहुत सारी चीजें हमने उनके साथ यूज की है. We have actually revived some of the folk arts. जो local artists होते हैं, you don't have to worry about कि आप ड्रामा में परफेक्ट होने चाहिए. You have to have कि वहाँ का जो हर एक गांव में या हर एक 30, 40, 50 गांव के ब्लॉक में आपको कुछ न कुछ आर्टिस्ट मिल जाते हैं. हाउ यू यूज दोस आर्टिस्ट टू डू दिस बिहेवियरल चेंज, बिकॉज उनका लैंग्वेज, उनका डायलेक्ट इज वेरी मच क्लोज टू व्हाट दे आर स्टेइंग. सो दैट्स व्हाई द कनेक्शन विद द कम्युनिटी बिकम्स वेरी फास्ट. आप अभी डिजिटल मीडिया में बहुत ज्यादा चीजें बॉम्बार्ड होता है, वो शायद से कई बार उतना इम्पैक्टफुल नहीं होता जितना सोशल आर्ट कैंपेन से हम लोग ने सोचा है कि अचीवमेंट हुआ है. So I just would like to stop here right now and maybe just open for a question answer session.
I want to raise hand because I think because it's really so connect with what we also have been doing on behavioral change communication this, and I can keep on hearing the kind of work that we have been doing. But we have Professor Cherry who is joining us in 10-15 minutes. So so any questions, I think we can open the floor. But I think I must appreciate and thank you, Divyang, that you have invested time in strategizing the session and given all the designated fellows a diversity in terms of different projects and different formats and different approaches. So thank you very much. I think it's really, really appreciated.
Thank you. I enjoyed it really. It was a great interaction. I think it's a time is the limitation, but I think it was really a great, experience for me also.
It always happens when you have so much of things to talk about and diversity to talk about. And I was just thinking when you were presenting this out that how one decision that you have taken at Vasmos has changed the entire thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Yes, questions, please. Parul.
Fellows, you can ask your questions to sir.
And Parul, you can also ask questions. It's not like that you're moderating, so you can't ask.
Yes, Kritika.
So, sir, actually, I wanted to ask that in majority of the issues in the country is with the transparency of the funds that the government allocate for improving the conditions. So, is the Tata Trust, when involved in such a big investment, then the government is giving around 156 crore, like in the Gujarat. So, are you also involved in ensuring that the transparency is maintained, or that the work which is done is effective and worth the money?
Okay, excellent question. I think, Kritika, I think this is very important point. And I think I give you two examples on it. So the project where we have involved with the government, where 156 crore investment has gone, there are two things which has happened. One thing, all this money has gone to a village water and sanitation committee. So the community becomes a owner of this money. Now, when you give money to the community and community also contribute 10% of their money, I think their ownership becomes very high. So they feel that this is my money, and कोई household ने 100 रुपया भी contribution देगा, they will go and ask कि भैया what is happening to our scheme. So that way it's very important that the community took the charge of money and implemented the program. So that way there was a very high transparency at the community level. We also did some work on a transparency that every village जो गांव में scheme बना है that will be put up into a public domain. So वो एक बड़े board पे ये everything will be written कि how much money what is the component of the project, how much money we have received from the government, how much money we are spending, what is the spend happen every month, that needs to be put up into the Gram Sabha. So you need to create a checks and balances at the community level. That was the community's money which is going to them, and that's why the transparency was the highest. So that was a very good model what we have actually learned. So that way the money which has gone to the community has been secure. Obviously there may be a cases, 2-5% cases absolutely is going to happen, but we can't deny that fact कि होता है. But it's not like 50% cases of corruption happen. 2-5% कहीं होता है, वो we do understand that. सेकेंड जो हमने एक शुरू किया था उसमें बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग वो मॉडल किया था कि वहां पे द फर्स्ट टाइम इन 2015 आई थिंक वी स्टार्टेड द डायरेक्ट कैश सब्सिडी ट्रांसफर फॉर अ सैनिटेशन पार्ट. सो now government has adopted it on a large scale, and that actually helps in terms of breaking the barrier. So one of the barriers what we found that the money from state to district to block to village to household. So there are 4 channels are involved, and every channel takes sometimes 30 days to 50 days. And because of that, the trust by the people to get that money lost. So they don't have a trust into the system. What we build, we say we will give money from directly to the district to the bank account of a beneficiary. But we need to create that system of validation, verification. Money should not go to some other person. So that's the system we do, and we actually made a system there. Within 30 days, one has to make the payment. If you don't give a trust to them that we are efficient enough to provide you 30 days money within 30 days, they will not do their works because they have to invest the money in the toilet construction. So this was for sanitation. So they build the toilet. They say, okay, my toilet has been done. These are the information. Within 30 days, we give the money to them. And hence, I think this whole system has, worked quite well. And I think instilling the trust among the community that if you do something, there will be money will flow within specific time duration. That was, I think, the aspects which we have, I think, taken care of, and we could reduce the the corruption or whatever level by, I think, around 50-60%. We could reduce that aspect, but we have also enhanced the efficiency of the systems.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Now, Sadan, want to ask you a question. Sadan, go ahead.
Tell me whenever I'm not, because I have some connectivity issues.
Sadan, you're not audible here. Sadan?
Am I audible now?
No, not yet.
You can write your question in chat box.
Am I audible?
Yeah. Sadan, are you typing your question there?
Ma'am, I'm unable to type it even. It says that you're not longer a part.
Sadan,
Now you are audible.
audible.
Now you are audible.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I hope I'm audible. Please let me know whenever I'm not, because I have connectivity issues. So, hi, sir. It was an amazing session, and also, as you must be knowing, that we have all been placed by C4Y, and I was very glad to listen this session because currently I'm working on this project only, project related to this sector only, sanitation and hygiene. So, I would like to know a basic question because as I'm working in this right now currently, so what we have observed that I was working in Gaya district region in Bihar. And when we're talking about toilet and when we're talking about sanitation, everything comes into picture when we say कि fund allot हो गया, toilets बन रही हैं, लोगों को encouragement हो रहा है. But जो मैंने study में पढ़ा, मतलब I'm not अभी इतने deep नहीं गए हैं, but हम जो study में discover करा वो ये भी है that there is a reluctancy in people in using washrooms itself. मतलब होने के बावजूद भी वो नहीं जाना चाहते हैं. So I'm talking about certain areas of Gaya district. So I would like to know कि आप लोग construction कर रहे हैं washrooms का, you take up projects and you're going out and reaching to people for the sanitation purposes. But अगर reluctancy खुद से है public में, then what is the role you're doing? Like are you organizing some sort of ease programs or some sort of guidance for them to tell them कि what exactly they कि उनको use क्यों करना चाहिए, क्योंकि समझ में आता है कि toilets बन रही हैं, but there is a lot of reluctancy when we go to certain districts and villages, and especially in Bihar where I'm studying these days. I'm studying about it, so I would like to know what you're doing for it.
So let me tell you, Divyang, that he is placed with the Asia Foundation. And so two of them are there. So the project assigned by Asia Foundation is what he's referring to.
Okay, great. No, very good question. And I think that's the, I think the last section which I talked about, it's on a behavioral change. Okay. So one is toilet is a public personal choice. Okay. I would say personal choice. It's not a government's responsibility. That's what I feel. Okay. Obviously the government has run a program. They have given 12,000 rupees subsidy, all those things. But it's important that people need to understand why the toilet is required. And there are multiple dimensions to it. One of the basic dimension what worked well with us is about motivating women about constructing toilet and using toilets. Why women? Because women feel dignified, women feel safe about using toilets. I think that's one of the basic motivating factor we found. We also found there are male members don't use toilets because I think initially when the campaign started, I think there was a lot of emphasis on the women to use toilet. But I think the male members say कि ये तो महिलाओं के लिए हमको क्या है? And I have a cases where people in Gujarat, youngsters go in the morning, they take a bike and go 4 kilometers away for defecation. So they spend money on a petrol to go open vacation. Now, there we actually build a more system at the community level. So, and I think I just also connect with that in vaccination की साथ में जोड़ूंगा उसको. Vaccination में क्या कहा गया है कि unless and until everyone is vaccinated, no one is safe. Okay, that's what I think currently we all know कि जब तक 70% लोग vaccination नहीं होंगे 80% तब तक कोई safe नहीं है. So our aim is to achieve 70-80% of the vaccination. The same philosophy was used in a sanitation space where unless and until 100% people uses toilet and use the defecation in toilets, there are chances that the water will be contaminated. So this is all sources are going to be unsafe. So community level पे ये जरूरी है कि वो एक social norms बनाए कि अगर कोई बाहर टॉयलेट जाता है तो उसके ऊपर कुछ social norms होने चाहिए, अदरवाइज तो वो पूरा गांव का तालाब खराब कर रहा है और वो बाकी लोगों को रिस्क पे डाल रहा है. So that's why we use both individual communication on behavioral change and we use all the community social norm creation. जब सोशल नॉर्म्स बनता है, पेयर प्रेशर बढ़ता है, तो देन देयर आर हायर चांसेस दैट द पीपल कैन start following some specific practices. So that could be used in your case also. Then panchayat has to take that calls. Otherwise, अगर वो नहीं कहते हैं, so obviously it's they are at the loss. So that's what I feel in terms of using these two techniques. One is individual communication and second is the community communication to create a social norms. That's I think important.
Thank you, sir. With this, I think we should close this session because it's already 5.
Any other last question, Parul? One last question can be taken because Professor Cherry will join in at 5:15, so we can kind of take a 5-7 minute break and we can close by another 2-3 minutes.
Okay, ma'am. Anybody else want to ask any question?
Divyang, I want to really ask you one thing, and just for the fellows, because what we're trying to work together right now is an assignment because they have to do a lot of deliverables as part of the fellowship. Every month they have either, as I told you earlier, a report or a blog or a case study, a film. But one more thing that we're trying to work together is to develop a proposal, conceptualize a project, and this all sessions coming from your side, from all the partners and all the organizations, is actually building their understanding on how do you really conceptualize to the last mile of implementation and assessment and everything. So in this context, what everybody is going to work together, one collective proposal. So we're just trying to see as a cohort if they can come out with a proposal which we can real time pitch with Namami Gange or with Jal Jeevan Mission or anybody, and see the feasible and they implement also. It's not like that. So that's an exercise that we are developing. So key because you have conceptualized and and implemented project at very different scale and range. Any takeaways for them for this exercise? Because the first time in their life they're going to build a proposal, pitch a proposal, and then implement a proposal, because it's not, it will go beyond 6 months. So whoever will be interested will be implementing it that way. So we're just trying to create a cadre of this water managers and sustainability professionals. And we're not saying that we finish the responsibility after 6 months and then you're done. We're saying we're giving you a roadmap after that also, and this all will fit into it. Whoever is interested, obviously, yeah. So takeaways for them, because later we create a mentoring group also to help them out to more conceive and better. But I think it'll be really interesting to get that tips to them. Insights and everything.
Thank you. No, I think it's
so that's what we are trying to work together right now currently. And once we have certain stage, we will reach out to Namami Gange to see if youth group of this scale, where they are properly mentored and all that, can also plan and implement. So yeah.
No, it's very important, I think, and I think at this point of time or in the juncture of their career, it's important to build proposal, and I think that will give you a lot of confidence. When you build a proposal, you get it approved, you implement it yourself. So that way, I think it's really a very good process which you are adopting. I think 2 or 3 maybe pointers which I would like to give them. One point, I think it's important that you understand the problem to the core, because if you don't articulate your problem effectively, you will not be able to solve that problem. And why I am saying that, because in current times, I mean, I see a lot of proposals, and I think that's based on my experience. If I say out of 100 proposals, if I look, 70-75 proposals are a very good English, okay, but it doesn't articulate a problem. Okay, they may say ki I will change the climate and I will do that and that, but if you look at and that the community, which I think as again company, what is their need and what is their priority, we need to understand it very correctly. So rather than focusing on the optics, try to look at what is the real problem, and that problem identification has some steps. Okay, and those steps are important to follow. So one step I would say ki when you try to identify the problem, you need to look at who is the core stakeholder for that. Also, who is the target audience, who is the person whose problem you are going to solve. And then you define two things with them. One, their need may be a long laundry list. And second, their priority. Okay, if you do that, you find that ki, okay, what is the real problem and what could be the potential solution. So if you look at their long list of needs, and within that, there could be a 1 or 2 or 3 priorities that you need to address. So if you look at these two things, if you can identify, you will get the right problem statement, and then remaining things will fall in place. Second tip I would say ki whenever you do this problem identification, you understand who is your client. I would say, in a better word, I would say you need to talk to women separately, you need to talk to male separately, or you need to talk to children separately. Unless and until you talk to different people within the family, you will not be able to understand their priorities and their needs, because for male members, the priorities are different, and female members, the priorities are different. So that way you need to actually look at that who are your client, and that client is really, you are taking enough attention to that client to understand their priority and need. And based on that, you can look at the collective action. So that's, I think, the second tip, which I feel is important to you to follow. So focus on core, don't get into fancy presentation, don't get into that space. I mean, don't carried away by that. Focus on your problem. If you can identify your problem, articulate effectively, I think any donor would be happy to share with you. And obviously you need to beautify it a bit in terms of the right kind of a modeling and stuff like that. But if your core is clear, then I don't think there is a problem in terms of your proposal to get approved. That's what I feel, and I look at it on the proposal. A small point, I think you always put up a risk factors of your proposal, because you need to understand what are the risk elements involved into your proposal to either get success or a failure, and how you can mitigate those risk factors, because that would be an important, because you know that there are going to be a risk into it, and you are also looking at how to mitigate those risks. So if these two things you are keeping in mind, then people know that yeah, you have thought through the all pros and cons of the proposal, rather than you have just simply put up something what you find interesting or you find that's a problem, but there are risks. So if there is a high risk, someone would not like to fund it. But if you say ki, even though it's a high risk, I have some mitigation measures. So that, I think, if you can just put up, I think it would be helpful to you to, touch upon the right core of the donors. And obviously the last is about the bringing the human elements, emotional element, what you are impacting, why you are impacting. That's important. If these two things, I think, need to be part of it. That's what I think I feel as a proposal writer.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think you have asked you to mentor us later, mentor the cohort later, if you will take that responsibility, not that much, but briefly. Yeah, so great, and thank you very much. I think, Parul, if you can just, you can close the session, and but on Center for Youth behalf and all the designated fellows, this is amazing. When I remember using 3 hours, and look, we yet to have, we can go on and on for some more time. So yeah, I know, because you have to share a lot.
I think I have not shared about my experience on that, but I think it's a good good experience. And see, I worked with around 500 fellows. Alka, and I think even if today I am actually in touch with more than 150 fellows. on either LinkedIn, either on WhatsApp. But I think so I think what I felt why fellowship is important in the country. I think this is a nation building exercise. Okay, it's really a great social capital what you are creating, Alka. If this social capital get that enlightenment, वो जो था ना बुद्ध को जो मिला था वो enlightenment अगर इसमें मिल जाता है, I think it's a great service to the nation. I think we need nation building people in the country, and in water sector I tell you there is a huge dearth of right kind of people, and water problem is not going to go away in soon, and I mean it is going to be a longer term problem. We need a great water warriors, I would say, and I think your effort has been commendable. I feel these people, if they get really some kind of a good platform or a launch pad, I see a great opportunity for them and a bright career ahead. But not necessarily they should continue on this. In any case, wherever you work, try and do some philanthropy as a part of your nature. That's, I think, important. And philanthropy cannot be only in terms of money. Philanthropy in terms of a small action is also important. So I think you can become ambassadors for water space. That's really great. Thank you very much, Alka. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Great. Thank you.